Chapter 528. Sauron's figure appeared on the wall again. In an instant, a flame appeared on his dark red skin, and then he turned into a human-shaped flame. His figure was so eye-catching in the darkness, so eye-catching. He was like a torch in the darkness, instantly attracting the attention of many enemies. Then, Sauron, who had just made a flashy appearance, disappeared from the enemy's sight. Soon, several demons rushed toward him from the chaotic battlefield. It seemed that they were not used to his eye-catching appearance. A rock appeared in front of him, and the surrounding dretches swarmed toward it. The berserk demon let out an angry growl and rushed over to entangle the other party. Then Sauron swung his long sword and slashed, taking advantage of the other party being trapped by the berserk demon to attack wildly. An enemy evil demon fell. Sauron took back his weapon and took a breath. After seeing that there were no enemies nearby, he jumped on the wall again. Flame burn. Sauron, who was quite eye-catching, once again attracted aggro. It was as if he had a taunting aura, and another group of enemies were attracted to him. The IQ of demons was really low. No wonder they were beaten by the devils for so long. Sauron even had a little bit of evil in his heart. It seemed that as long as he activated the flame body ability, there would always be some fools among the enemies who wanted to kill him. This was tantamount to suicide. As long as they dared to come, he would order his subordinates to surround them and beat them up. In the end, he would personally harvest their heads. He killed 5 or 6 demons in a row. Sauron finally found that the enemies had learned a lot. This time, no one dared to rush up. They just crazily attacked the wall. Under the command of the high-grade demons, they were ready to take down the wall first. However, at this time, Sauron had accumulated enough demon blood. When he beheaded a Hezru who was running around madly, his accumulated power finally reached the critical point of a breakthrough. A row of data appeared in front of him: middle-grade Hezru killed. Extracting target's demon blood. You've gained 23 points of demon power. Current body can't absorb soul energy. Soul energy conversion. Feedback 980 slaughter EXP to the body. Ability increased. Creature level increased to 12. Demon bloodline activated. A mutation occurred in his own body. His evil demon bloodline had undergone a mutation. Bloodline mutation. Energy mutation. Dretch, form fusion mutation. He had evolved into the flaming demon form. Innate ability, devil skin, has been strengthened. Talent ability, devil resistance, has been enhanced. Talent ability, flaming body, has been strengthened. Dretch, form mutation fusion. You have lost your spell-like ability, stinking cloud. You've retained the spell-like ability, fear. You've retained the ability, multi-strike. You've retained your innate ability, telepathy. Demon form advancement fusion complete. Automatically comprehended the innate ability, flame whip. Insufficient energy. The current demon bloodline cannot retain the elite bloodline. He had lost some of his abilities as an elite dretch. Terrifying flames ignited. The flames on Sauron's body burst out all of a sudden. Even one of the dretch he summoned was burned to death, and the nearby demons all hid far away. Sauron's whole body was in the flames, and his form had undergone a drastic change. His originally thin body gradually became stronger, the demon horns on his head became larger, and the demon wings on his back grew a lot. The most obvious change was his ears, which had become sharp like elves. At the same time, mysterious demon tattoos appeared all over his body. Flaming demon form. Sauron finally mutated into the ranks of middle-grade demons, but his appearance seemed to be a little different from other flaming demons. Maybe it was because he still had the dretch form of the elite bloodline before. Boom. A strong arm with sharp claws stretched out of the flames. Sauron's body, which had exceeded the height of ordinary people, slowly walked out of the flames. The strange demon tattoos were all over his naked chest. A pair of demon horns were like curved horns, full of the oppression of a superior demon. Even if it was only the form of a middle-grade flaming demon, from the perspective of being able to evolve into a Baler, Sauron's form was obviously more superior than other middle-grade demons. Flames jumped on the demon wings, accompanied by the whistling wind. Sauron suddenly clenched his fist. A burst of demonic power. The burning fire behind Sauron suddenly began to gather like a tornado. Countless flames rushed to his palm, and then a 5-meter-long flame whip formed. The surrounding temperature gradually rose. The fire behind Sauron had been completely extinguished, but the flame whip in his hand seemed to be solid. The innate ability of a demon allowed him to feel the whip as flexible as his own arm with a flick of his hand. Flame whip, talent ability. Flaming demons have the ability to control flames. Some flaming demons who inherit the Baler bloodline can master this special talent ability in advance. Flaming demons can condense the power of flames into a flame whip. This weapon is regarded as a natural magic weapon. The initial level of the weapon is +1. It causes an additional 5 points of fire damage to the enemy. Flaming demons can increase the power of the flame whip by 1 every 5 creature levels, increasing 5 points of fire damage. It can be regarded as a +5 natural magic weapon, causing an additional 25 points of fire damage to the target. Note, with the strengthening of the demon bloodline, the flame whip can evolve into the flame whip of the Baler. The demonic wings behind him slowly opened. Sauron walked up the city wall again with heavy steps. The land he walked on was burning, and the ground was scorched black. A dazzling flame streaked across the air. Sauron swung the flame whip and wrapped around a Vrock. Then, the Vrock let out a mournful cry and dragged it down the city wall. The sword flashed in a chilling radiance. Sauron held the flame whip in one hand and the +1 sword in the other. He dashed toward his target in an instant. I've finally evolved. Now, he had the ability to fight other intermediate demons alone. Although Sauron hadn't fully understood the flaming demon's abilities, he was sure that as he accumulated more demon bloodline, he would be able to grasp those abilities bit by bit and eventually evolve into a legendary advanced demon, flame demon, form. Chapter 529. Another intermediate demon fell under Sauron's sword. With the emergence of demon power, the demon tattoo on Sauron's body changed slightly again. There seemed to be a strange rune on his strong arm. At the same time, a new data prompt appeared: killed mid-tier flow demon. Extracting target's demon bloodline. You've gained 24 demon power. Current body cannot absorb soul energy. Soul energy conversion. Feedback 1050 Slaughter EXP. Ability upgrade. Creature level increased to level 13. Demon bloodline activated. Evolution mutation occurred. Flaming demon, form gained ability upgrade. You've learned the spell-like ability, Fireball. You've learned the spell-like ability, Burning Hand. You've learned the talent, Strange Weapon Mastery, Whip. You've learned the talent, Weapon Mastery, Long Sword. A new spell-like ability. Sauron's flashy figure appeared on the city wall again, but this time he directly threw out a big fireball. The fireball instantly exploded in the crowd, killing many unlucky people. Anyway, both sides died a lot. After all, many people were seriously injured in the beginning of the battle, and the area covered by the fireball was not small. At this time, Sauron's attributes had become: name, Sauron race, demon form, flaming demon, grade 3, medium creature, creature level 13 attributes, strength 20, agility 16, vitality 20, intelligence 14, wisdom 15, charm 16 alignment, lawful evil. Note, other demons will be slightly hostile to your actions. HP, 121175 demonic energy, 361500. Skills, sneak 125, literacy 70, intimidation 70, spell identification 70, use magic device 70, listen 85, detect 85, search 60 ability, flaming body, flaming whip, demon claws, +1 natural magic weapon, demon skin, damage reduction +10, demon resistance, all resistances +10. Specialty, multi-attack, weapon mastery, long sword, xenogenic weapon mastery, whip spell-like abilities, fear, once per day, dominate demon, once per day, fireball, once per day, burning hand, once per day, summon demon, telepathy. Evolved into the flaming demon form. Sauron's greatest improvement was the increase in all of his attributes, his increased vitality, and his mastery of the flame whip. Moreover, the damage dealt by his flaming body had increased by 5 points. As he was a monster, although Sauron had 20 points of strength and constitution, he could not obtain the corresponding supernatural abilities because the abilities were integrated into the demon bloodline. In fact, his explosive strength, reaction speed, recovery ability, and so on had all been significantly improved. The power of the Dretch form was reserved. Sauron's demon claws were still regarded as a +1 magic weapon, but he was still more used to fighting with weapons. At this moment, the battle in the Steel Fortress had reached a stalemate. If there were no external disturbances, then it would eventually become a war of attrition. In the end, the number of casualties on both sides might reach half. Because sometimes it was normal for demons to fight for a day and a night. The succubus army could still hold the fort for the time being, but the enemy had a clear advantage in numbers. If there were no reinforcements, they would suffer heavy losses. Sauron was always paying attention to the enemies around him. On one hand, he was conserving his strength, and on the other hand, he was looking for injured enemies to finish them off. If there were traces of powerful demons nearby, he would immediately turn off his flaming body ability and escape into the crowd. No matter who rushed in, they would die because there were 3 soul judgment demons and a Glabriza near Sauron. Sauron was very eye-catching. The other allied higher demons naturally noticed him. Since he was an ally, of course, they did not want him to die so easily. The succubus officers would occasionally pay attention to him intentionally or unintentionally, dispatching troops to replenish the consumption of Sauron's wall. There were corpses everywhere in front of him. The injured ghouls would retreat from time to eat and recover, regardless of whether it was the bodies of enemies or allies, they just focused on eating. The cruelty of the bottomless abyss was undoubtedly displayed on the battlefield. Sauron's injuries were also worsening. No matter how good his skills were, and how careful he was, there were still too many enemies in front of him. If he was not careful, he would be attacked once or twice. Dong dong dong. Just when a wall of the steel fortress was about to fall under the frenzied attack of the gnolls, a dull sound of war drums suddenly sounded from behind the enemy. Reinforcements? Sauron looked into the distance in surprise, but soon he could not help but frown in confusion. It was not the reinforcements of the succubus army that appeared, but a group of creatures that surprised Sauron, Taurens. Abyss Taurens. This group of tall, burly, and powerful minotaurs held battle axes, heavy hammers, and totem poles in their hands. They directly charged into the rear of the gnoll army. Like a red-hot, thick, and hard iron rod, they forcefully stabbed into the gnolls' buttocks with brute force, causing the gnolls to howl in pain. The Taurens' equipment was relatively good. Although they did not wear full-body armor, their weapons were quite good. With their tall body and natural strength, they defeated the rear of the gnoll army. However, they did not seem to want to come to support the succubus army, but more to kill the enemy as much as possible. The Tauren king, Buffett? Sauron seemed to suddenly remember something and could not help but slap his head. The group of Taurens in front of him was undoubtedly the subordinates of the Tauren king, Buffett. It was the demon lord of the 600th floor of the abyss and the enemy of Yeenagu, the Gnoll king. The 2 biggest enemies of Yeenagu, the Gnoll king, were the succubus queen, Mechanut, and the Tauren king, Buffett. The enemy of an enemy was an ally. The appearance of the Tauren army seemed to want to give the Gnoll king a hard blow. This momentum would soon defeat the enemy in the rear. The Abyss Taurens were tall and had a natural advantage in strength. The attack of this well-equipped Tauren army was earth-shattering. Just their aura alone was enough to frighten many low-grade demons into turning tail and running. Not many ordinary ghouls and gnolls could withstand a few blows from them. The burly Tauren chieftain even wielded a huge, heavy axe, and with a swing of his hand, he left a trail of severed limbs all around him. If it were not for the fact that he did not have the aura of a demon lord, Sauron would have suspected that he was the incarnation of the Tauren king. The Abyss Taurens had natural abilities such as terrifying strike, breaking weapons, breaking shields, fierce charge, powerful slam, and so on. Their creature level might not be high, but the challenge level was very high. In Sauron's line of sight, a small team of heavily armored Tauren warriors roared fiercely. They pointed their thick horns at the enemy in front of them, and then directly charged at the enemy. In an instant, the enemy was knocked off their feet and thrown off their feet. These Tauren warriors were quite fierce, and some of them did not care about breaking one of their horns. They continued to fight wildly with their battle axes. The Gnoll army was finished. Under such a pincer attack, it was impossible for them to hold on for long. Sure enough, the succubus commander quickly ordered a counterattack, with more than a dozen demon-hunting spiders opening the way, 7 or 8 Glabrizu breaking the formation, and 5 or 6 soul judgment demons covering. The most elite middle and high-grade demons of the succubus army instantly attacked, and like a sharp knife, they directly stabbed into the enemy's interior. The defeat of the Gnoll army was unstoppable. Sauron did not hesitate to activate his flaming body again, and led a group of low-grade demons to outflank the enemy from the side. In this kind of situation, the low-grade demons under his command rushed forward one by one. Chapter 530. Northern Tower. When she heard a very rhythmic knock outside the door, the Eye of the North slowly raised her head. With a faint magic aura, the wizard's hand put all the documents and files on the dugga behind her. Inside the dugga were volumes of documents, on the side were notes recorded by many witches, and at the back were books kept by the council. The knowledge stored here was quite precious. Their value may even surpass all the wealth of a kingdom. Therefore, this room was covered with fireproof and dustproof magic circles. At the same time, it was directly included in the protection of a huge magic lock. Come in. As the voice of the Eye of the North sounded, a middle-aged witch with a serious face came in. She bowed slightly to express her respect for the Eye of the North, then put a thick document on the desk and said slowly, "Your Excellency, the Eye of the North. This is the transaction record with the South Coast for half a year, including weapons procurement, trade cooperation, and construction of fortifications. Our profit in the first half of the year was about 300,000 Kindler, the largest of which was the sale of extraordinary weapons to the city of Mordor." The Eye of the North took the document and glanced at it, then nodded and said, "Very good." The Witch Council was quite rich. But they were also very short of money because it took too many resources to cultivate a witch. The internal application of the Witch Council to transfer resources to build a low-level wizard tower had been filled in 30 years. Although they had a large amount of land in the north, the finances of the Witch Council had always been tight because of the high consumption of internal research. Now the profit of trading with the city of Mordor was comparable to most of the territory's income, which made the Eye of the North feel satisfied with her wise decision. As long as this trade line could be maintained, the Witch Council would have more and more funds. They would be able to cultivate more talented juniors and build 1 or 2 new wizard towers. "Your Excellency." The middle-aged witch with a serious face took out another document and said in a deep voice, "This is the purchase list of the city of Mordor for the second half of the year. It feels a little strange, so I brought it over for you to have a look." "Strange?" Eye of the North immediately took it and looked at it. At first glance, there didn't seem to be anything strange, but when she compared it with the purchase list of the first half of the year, she quickly found something strange. There was a problem with the weapons purchase order. The Northern Witch Council had the ability to mass-produce +1 rare-grade weapons, which was the accumulation of hundreds of thousands of years. The Mordor city had always had a large number of weapons orders from the Witch Council. These mass-produced +1 rare-grade weapons were sold to the Mordor city at a relatively cheap price, and the number had always been quite large. It could be said that it was the largest arms trade in the entire material plane, and it often exceeded the trading limit of 100,000 Kindler. Sometimes, because the transaction amount was too large, Mordor City directly used unminted gold to pay. The elite troops of Mordor City had been replacing them with +1 rare-grade weapons in batches, and the northern witches had long known about this. However, since they had a good relationship with each other and the Parliament could earn quite a bit of profit, no one cared too much about it. The problem was with the weapons order. According to the preliminary statistics of the northern witches, the weapons purchased by Mordor City were enough to arm most of the elites. According to common sense, the demand for weapons purchase in the second half of the year should be reduced. But in fact, the weapons purchase orders of Mordor City in the second half of the year did not decrease, but nearly doubled compared to the previous year, and there were even signs of further orders. This was not strange enough. What was even more strange was that most of the weapons ordered by Mordor City in the first half of the year were one-handed weapons and small and medium-sized weapons, but the weapons ordered in the second half of the year were all medium-sized and above, including a large number of heavy weapons, such as two-handed swords, beheading swords, two-handed axes, two-handed greatswords, heavy warhammers, large polearms, and so on. Such weapons seemed to be rarely popular in the army, and even adventurers did not use them much. However, some races with natural divine power liked to use such heavy weapons. There was obviously something fishy about this. However, the Eye of the North did not want to delve into it. Anyway, it was just a +1 rare weapon. As long as the Witch Council could make enough profit, it would be fine. After all, if this batch of weapons continued, their profits in the second half of the year might directly double. She guessed that Soren was planning to resell weapons. As for who he was selling to, she could not guess. It might be a force in the Outer Islands, or it might be some other race. Anyway, Mordor City could not directly consume such a large number of orders. No problem. The Eye of the North raised her hand and handed back the orders for the second half of the year. She slowly said, "Let the factories below speed up their work." Some of the low-grade witches also assigned some enchantment tasks to them, and a part of the profits can be distributed to them. In the second half of this year, the Witch Council will mobilize funds to build 3 more beginner wizard towers, so there must be no problems with this trade line. The middle-aged witch immediately nodded and said, "Understood. I'll arrange it now." The Witch Council was originally a neutral organization. For any neutral organization, their own interests were always the most important. The rise of the Witch Council had inherited some dirty things. In their eyes, good and evil were far less important than the pursuit of arcane truth. By the way, before the middle-aged witch left, she turned and said, "The messenger of Mordor City came today to ask when you are going to attend the ceremony. They need to prepare in advance." The Eye of the North glanced up and said slowly, "I will arrive a day earlier. I haven't seen Gloria for a long time. I don't know how she has progressed. This girl is stubborn. I hope her choice is not wrong." Sigh. As a powerful legendary spellcaster, she had felt the fluctuations of fate. Some kind of uneasiness made her aware, and it was getting more and more obvious. She was afraid that it would be a terrible disaster. Even she sometimes felt powerless. The stars were getting dimmer and dimmer. The avatars of the gods had begun to appear in the mortal world. When the gods could not be high above, then all the order in the mortal world would be strongly impacted. Mordor City. Since teams of soldiers were in formation, the whole barracks was brewing a dignified atmosphere. Even an idiot could feel the coming of war. Mordor City was about to launch an expansion war. Many people who were lurking near Mordor City were aware of this, but what worried them was that they did not know where Mordor City would attack. And when they learned that Mordor City was only dealing with the nearby indigenous tribes, many nervous forces finally breathed a sigh of relief. They didn't know when. Mordor City had become a force that scared them. Chapter 531. What did the city of Mordor want? This was what the whole South Coast wanted to know. There was a new god behind the city of Mordor. He also had a close relationship with the Lady of Wealth, the goddess of sea, and the goddess of misfortune. He had a huge pirate army in the secular world, occupied the richest shipping routes in the material plane, had a close relationship with the Witch Council, and the powerful Princess Royal of Arendelle seemed to have a good relationship with him. All these added up made many people feel uneasy, and every move of the city of Mordor attracted their attention. However, Mordor City's movements never stopped. It was either moving here or there. They had collected a lot of information, but the most important information had not been found. They could not guess what Sauron, who was standing behind Mordor City, wanted. Now, some people have called the city of Mordor a kingdom built on the outer islands with the territory of the sea as its territory. Port Mordor. At this time, it was just dawn, and many people were still sleeping, but there were groups of busy soldiers in the dock area. Captain. A man with a serious face came in front of Stephen, the captain of the 7th Battalion of the Mordor garrison, pulled out a two-handed sword with a cold light, and said in a deep voice, "This is the first batch of weapons. Most of them are two-handed swords and two-handed greatswords, and their quality has all been tested. Because most of the weapons forged before were one-handed weapons, only heavy swords were sent in this batch. I'm afraid the other weapons will have to wait, and the arsenal will need more time." Clang. Stephen was wearing a captain's uniform. After hearing the words, he pulled out a two-handed greatsword. The heavy weight made his wrist sink, and he murmured, "It's not light. What's the use of buying these weapons? It seems that not many people in the city of Mordor can use them." Two-handed heavy weapons were powerful. But the requirements for using them were also very high. It required the kind of people who were born with great strength. Otherwise, they would not be able to hold it for long, and it would affect their own agility. Stephen was already a warrior who paid attention to strength training, but he was still not used to holding a two-handed greatsword. His combat strength would be reduced by at least 30%. Many pirates' fighting styles were even more extreme than his. Some even used rapiers, which were much lighter than ordinary longswords. Perhaps only a very small number of people with innate divine strength would be able to handle these two-handed heavy weapons smoothly. Especially the two-handed greatsword on the side, it looked like a small door plank. It was estimated that only pirates with other bloodlines like the giant could play with it. This sword must weigh at least 50 pounds. Stephen weighed it in his hand and casually put it back. He then turned to the others and said, "Move them all back." Sir Sauron personally ordered it to be placed in the innermost warehouse. Very soon, the soldiers in the back began to move. One by one, they picked up the boxes with weapons and carried them to the city of Mordor. Because it was still early, they didn't see anything nearby. However, they didn't try to hide anything. It was obvious that they were transporting weapons back. Humans rarely used heavy weapons because of their physique. On the other hand, other races, such as dwarves and orcs, liked such weapons very much. Dwarves didn't need to think about it. They were originally experts in forging weapons. However, orcs were too far away from the city of Mordor. No one could guess why Sauron bought so many heavy weapons that his subordinates couldn't use at all. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky. Sauron's figure floated in mid-air, looking at the struggling soul in front of him, and said slowly, "It's useless." He waved his hand gently, and a Mayhew micrometeor whizzed out. With a violent explosion, it directly tore the soul in front of him. A strange power emerged and turned into invisible light spots that merged into Sauron's body. The body of the soul gradually dissipated. It had a very primitive and heterogeneous power of faith. This power was not very useful to Sauron, so he could only let it dissipate naturally. Clean up the battlefield. Sauron landed gently, turned around and looked at Night behind him, and said in a deep voice, "Capture as many slaves as possible. The city of Mordor needs more labor." Night immediately nodded and said, "Yes. Your Excellency." The indigenous village in front of them had been pacified. This was the first indigenous gathering place that Sauron cleaned up after he was free. In the next 6 months, he would sweep all the indigenous people within 100 kilometers of the city of Mordor, completely eliminate them or force them to migrate, and lay a good foundation for the next expansion plan of Mordor. The scattered battles were still ongoing. However, there was no need for Sauron to do anything. The pirate leaders were capable of doing things, and many middle-level officers were gradually trained. Capturing slaves, cleaning up the battlefield, and transporting the spoils. Everyone was busy in an orderly manner. Under Soren's iron rule, the pirate army had gradually learned order and discipline. This was their first appetizer. There were still many battles to come. In the future, except for the totem's soul that would be personally dealt with by Soren, the other enemies would be dealt with by them. This was also a kind of training. The real elites grew up in killing. A soul that was not strong enough. It only provided Soren with 2 divinity points, but it didn't matter. In the future, it could also increase his power a lot. There were many divine creatures scattered in the outer islands. If he could spend a lot of time cleaning them up, it could increase his power a lot. After all, this was a hidden power that had been brewing for thousands of years. Soon, the pirate army finished cleaning everything up, and the whole village was on fire. Soren nodded to the pirate leaders under his command, and then cast a teleportation spell. His figure instantly returned to the city of Mordor. This was the convenience of being a spellcaster. Although gods also had a very powerful spellcasting ability, it was a priest's ability that consumed divine power. They were much worse than wizards in all aspects. The priest level that gods were born with could only be used as auxiliary combat power. Back to the city of Mordor. Soren began a new round of learning and training. Becoming a god was not the end of a powerful path. On the contrary, becoming a god was just the beginning. Soren needed to learn how to master the power of the gods, how to control the church of the gods, and how to learn various knowledge and spells of wizards. During this time, his knowledge had increased by 30 points, and he was almost done with the spells that he had left behind. At this point, the advantage of learning spells of gods was obvious. Time passed little by little. The time of the military parade in Mordor was getting closer and closer. It was said that the incarnation of the goddess of joy had appeared in the south. Anyway, no one knew whether it was true or not. They just heard that a rich city in the south held a grand celebration ceremony. This was not the key to the problem. The key was that that day was not a celebration at all, and there was no important festival. The whole city held a 3-day celebration in front of them, which was simply puzzling. If there was anything important, it was that there seemed to be traces of liches in the material plane. These liches were all academic nerds. If it was not a big deal, liches basically rarely appeared in the eyes of mortals. They were originally undead creatures with a long life to squander. Most of the time, they hid in their lairs to do academic research or to plan some terrible conspiracies. Under normal circumstances, a lich might not appear for decades or even hundreds of years, but now that liches were seen everywhere, the meaning was not simple. The more powerful the existence, the more difficult it was to move around, and the greater the restrictions. Other things aside. If a lich suddenly appeared in Mordor and said that he was here for sightseeing, Soren would not believe it even if he was beaten to death. The most likely possibility was expulsion or a direct war. The appearance of liches made many human kingdoms nervous. The elves also set up a cordon near the forest. The undead were dangerous to any living creature, and liches were even more dangerous. Chapter 532. Flames streaked through the air. Sauron swung his flaming whip at an injured Vrock. It nimbly dodged the attack, but was still touched by the flaming whip. In an instant, a large patch of its skin was charred black, and it let out a miserable shriek. Although the flame whip was only regarded as a +1 magical weapon, its actual combat effect was comparable to a legendary weapon. As long as the creature was not completely immune to fire damage or had amazing resistance, it would be easy for it to slowly grind them to death. Sauron's advantage was his attack range. He didn't aim to kill the enemy in one hit because the battlefield was too chaotic. His main goal was to occasionally touch the enemy and be careful of his back. Not only were there enemies who might appear, but there were also allies who were in a frenzy. There was no other way. This was the nature of a demon. Sometimes, when they were in a frenzy, they would cut down anything they saw. The Vrock's injuries were getting worse and worse. When Soren slapped it on the head, the Vrock finally died with a scream. A row of data appeared in front of his eyes. Middle-ranked Vrock killed. Extracting target's demon bloodline. You've received 21 points of demon energy. Current body unable to absorb soul energy. Soul energy conversion. Received 950 slaughter EXP. Ability increased. Creature level increased to level 14. Demon bloodline activated. A mutation occurred in his own body. Flaming demon, form gained ability. Demon domination, gained ability. Fireball, cast level increased. Burning hand, cast level increased. It had to be said that leveling up in the abyss was just too fast, especially in the Blood Wars. Any demon here could be a mini-boss, but here, they were just cannon fodder. The Blood Wars were the easiest place to nurture a legend, but it was also the easiest place to die. In the Blood Wars of the Abyss, leveling up was as fast as dying. There were many creatures joining the Blood Wars every day, but not many could leave alive. Across the multiverse, only the most insane mercenaries would join the Blood War. There were other demons around Sauron who were advancing. For example, after a berserk demon successfully killed an injured Hezru, its demon bloodline immediately accumulated to the limit, and it became a new Hezru in a violent change of form. Unfortunately, it was quickly killed by a demon-hunting spider because it was blocking the spider's path. The mutation speed of ordinary demons was far slower than that of Sauron. Perhaps it was because their efficiency of fusing with the demon bloodline was not high. A timid fiend might need to kill a large number of enemies to level up, but Sauron only needed about half of them. This was the power of the soul. Maybe it was because the killing power was still working on Sauron, or maybe it was because of the original soul of a god. It was hard to say exactly what it was, but Sauron's speed of advancement was indeed much faster than ordinary demons. In the bottomless abyss, demons with fast advancement represented pure enough souls. It seemed that the soul power was easier to evolve here. The purer the soul, the easier it was to transform into powerful demons and devils. Sometimes, the Demon Lord and Devil Guild directly molded pure souls into high-grade demons and devils. But if it was a poor soul, it would be destroyed in an instant. Sauron carefully avoided the high-grade demons. With his current strength, it was still difficult to deal with high-grade demons. His chances of winning were less than 50%. He didn't like to do things that he was not sure of. The gnolls and ghouls were also not in his consideration. Although these creatures also had the power of demons, they were far less powerful than real demons. Sauron had now discovered an obvious thing, that was, if he killed demons, he would get more demonic power. But if he killed other creatures in the abyss, he would get more slaughter EXP. Now, the total amount of slaughter EXP he had given to the main body was 10 to 20,000. Although each demon was only about a few hundred to 1,000 points, the number of enemies was huge. Sauron had just killed 5 or 6 demons in a row. The enemy had been defeated. Sauron was seizing the time to chase the enemy, but he couldn't chase too far ahead. It was easy to be surrounded. He only killed the enemies on the side of the battlefield. The demon bloodline had accumulated to the current level. Sauron had felt that the breakthrough was right in front of him. If he continued to break through successfully, he might be able to advance into the elite form of the flaming demon. Because his creature level was about to reach level 15. As for the higher level boss form, he was afraid that he would have to suppress the mutation of his form and advance into a legendary creature in the form of the flaming demon. This wasn't worth it at all. Although the flaming demon leader had the same ability as the legendary Balrog, there was a big gap in form and talent. Advancing into the Balrog was a new starting point. Keeping the flaming demon form all the way to the boss level meant that he would continue to strengthen himself. It was not clear which advantage was more obvious. Sauron's goal was not only to become a boss-level demon, but also to become a demon lord of the bottomless abyss. In this way, the higher his starting point, the better. The enemy finally escaped. The succubus army did not pursue with full force because they also suffered a lot of casualties. After losing so many demons, it would take at least 10 days to half a month to replenish. The Taurens, who were in high spirits, clashed with the succubus army. Both sides suffered a little loss, but the loss did not increase. Under the Tauren chief's roar, many of the Taurens who were in a frenzy retreated and ran away without saying a word. The relationship between the Tauren king, Buffett, and the succubus queen, Mechanut, was not good. It was just a matter of using and cooperating with each other. Moreover, the relationship between the Tauren king and Sangyi was unclear. This mysterious and ancient Orbis had always been feared by the succubus queen. The Knoll king, Yinagu, the succubus queen, Mechanut, and the Tauren king, Buffett. Among these three demon lords, the succubus queen was the strongest, but her army was not enough. The succubus was a demon from the womb and was an important asset in the abyss. The army of the succubus queen mainly relied on other demons. The Knoll king, Yinagu, was not very powerful, but he had an ancient Orbis corpse behind him. No one knew what he got from it. And because he had conquered the Ghoul king, he had the largest number of troops. After all, it was much easier to create undead. Among the army of gnolls, ghouls, and demons, the Knoll king, Yinagu, had the most suppressive force. Finally, there was the Tauren king, Buffett. The Taurens under him had good fighting power, but the Taurens had never been a productive race. Most of the time, it was beaten by the Knoll king, Yinagu. Today, it was a fierce counterattack. This was the distribution of forces in the nearby area. No one knew if it was a coincidence or if the other demon lords were happy to see it, but they directly gathered together and fought to the death. As for the other demon lords, the forces that participated in the bloody war were in other places. You did a good job. The succubus officer once again appeared in front of Sauron. The other party looked at Sauron's naked chest, which was engraved with a mysterious demon tattoo, as if it had a strange charm. The succubus officer crossed his legs, stuck out his tongue, licked the corner of his mouth, and said in a seductive tone, "I admire you very much. From now on, you will be in charge of this military camp. If you are interested, you can come to my tent tonight. I don't mind bringing you some wonderful pleasure." Ha ha ha. The succubus officer smiled and left. Sauron was promoted again. The nearby demons were still hostile to him, but this time it seemed to be a lot less. The reason was only because Sauron had become stronger. Chapter 533. The war in the bottomless abyss was endless. When Sauron didn't remember to count the demon army under his command the next day, he heard the news of the bloody war, but he was not surprised at all. It was as if he subconsciously felt that this was the right thing to do. This kind of attitude really made people speechless. War, war, war. Since Sauron came to the abyss, the battles he experienced had not stopped. A surprise attack on Yinagu, the king of gnolls, had just ended, and in the blink of an eye, the enemy's revenge army had arrived. It was not easy to defeat the army of Yinagu, the king of gnolls, and temporarily get a breather. In the blink of an eye, the order for the entire succubus army in the Steel Fortress to participate in the Abyss Blood War was issued. This order could not be violated at all because the Abyss Blood War was the most important battle. As long as they received the order, they must all participate. No matter how many troops they had, if they dared not participate, they would be punished. The sky was still dark. The succubus army began to gather cannon fodder on a large scale. At this time, they no longer cared about the quality. Even the newly advanced dretches were needed. Anyway, in the Abyss Blood War, there were hundreds of thousands or even millions of demons. They had just experienced a battle, and it was impossible to let them fight on the main battlefield. It was good to bring more cannon fodder to make up the numbers. This time, the order of the bloody war was personally issued by the succubus queen, Mechanut. On the first layer of the abyss, 10,000 Abyss Plain, the two daughters of the succubus queen would personally participate in the war. The glorious nun would lead a huge demon army to besiege a blood war fortress that the devils had taken away. It was said that the devils were brewing some conspiracy again, and their task was to destroy the devil's power before their conspiracy was completed. War after war broke out. No one knew when this never-ending war would end, and no one could guarantee that they could laugh until the end. Everyone's luck would run out one day. That was why the demon lords would not participate in the bloody war in person, because if they died in the bloody war, they would really die. There was no way to resurrect them. Whether it was the demon lords or the devil dukes, they rarely participated in the bloody war in person. Death in the bloody war was permanent death. No powerful existence was willing to take this risk easily. The huge and bloated army took 2 days to arrive at the battlefield. Many low-level demons fell behind on the way, but new cannon fodder was soon forcibly recruited. 1/3 of Sauron's low-level demons secretly ran away, but they were quickly replenished. Even the cruel punishment couldn't stop these low-level demons from wanting to escape from the Abyss Blood War. Fear made them want to find the slightest chance to escape. It wasn't just Sauron's demon army, it was the same for the armies of other high demons. Even the middle-grade Hezru was a little listless. It seemed that they were not as excited as they were when they started fighting Yennegu. Even these idiots who liked to go on a rampage on the battlefield were not optimistic. One could imagine how terrifying the bloody battle was. The succubus army arrived. The huge demon army gathered on a plain, and in front of them was a majestic blood battle fortress. The succubus queen, the Knoll king, the Tauren king, the faceless lord, the undead monarch, the army of demon lords began to gather, and the number of demons suddenly reached a terrifying scale of nearly 1,000,000. But Sauron seemed to have noticed something, and this discovery made him shudder. The demons didn't bring much supplies. The total supply of the demon army was probably not even enough to guarantee the supply of 200,000 people. In other words, in the next battle, more than half of the demon army gathered here might die. It was simply heartless. Even the logistical supplies were telling Sauron how terrible the casualties would be in the next battle. The first day was very quiet. But when the second day arrived, the war broke out. The huge demon army gradually approached the blood battle fortress in front of them. In their field of vision were war machines glowing with cold light. The demons were well equipped, and there were a large number of munitions factories in the Baator Inferno. The first line of cannon fodder was the low-level undead. The second line of cannon fodder was the low-level demons. The third line of cannon fodder was the low-level demons and undead. The demon army directly put on the posture of cannon fodder in a war of attrition. They were simply sending their enemies to death, relying on their huge numbers to consume the enemy's combat strength first. Because of the 2 battles just now, Sauron's succubus army had suffered serious losses. So they didn't participate in the first battle, and Sauron also had the opportunity to observe the enemy. After all, this time they were dealing with the insidious and cunning demons. Many demon lords temporarily put down their hatred. The Knoll army was on the other side of the front line. Because of the outbreak of the blood battle, they had to cooperate with the other demon lords. Sauron thought that this would be a difficult siege. But he was wrong. When the demon army gathered outside the blood battle fortress, the scene that unfolded before his eyes almost overturned his understanding of the past. The heavy steel gates of the blood battle fortress actually opened, and then he saw teams of elite demons walking out of the fortress. They were disciplined and swift, and at a speed that the demons didn't even dare to imagine. They stood in formation outside the blood battle fortress. A difference of more than 10 times. The devil army faced the demon army that was more than 10 times their number, and they chose to fight the enemy outside the fortress in the open field. 1 against 10. What gave the demons so much confidence that they dared to give up the strong fortress in the face of more than 10 times their number and fight head-on? No wonder the demons were retreating in the blood battle. From the Baator Inferno, they were beaten all the way to their own territory. Just from the morale in front of them, the 2 sides were not on the same level at all. The demons had always fought against the demon army that was dozens of times their number. As long as they were not overwhelmed by the huge demon army, their morale would rise little by little. Now, 10 times the number of enemies couldn't scare them. Damn it, they actually dared to go out of the city to fight head-on in this situation. Sauron was really a little worried about the next battle. Should he find a chance to run away? With Sauron's understanding of the demons, they would never do this if they were not 70% or 80% sure of victory. The battle was about to start. But Sauron was already looking for a way out. He couldn't affect the battle at this level much, so it wasn't worth it to lose his life in the blood battle. Perhaps there were a lot of demons who had such thoughts. Chapter 534. Strict orders were given, and order was maintained. That was Sauron's first impression of the demon army. The army was the embodiment of order, and as the evil demon army, they were the embodiment of order. It could be said that if not for the endless demon army in the abyss, the Baator Inferno would definitely have the ability to attack other planes and even the upper plane, Mountain Paradise. The demons kept advancing in the Blood War, but they also kept falling in the Blood War because the number of enemies was too large. Facing enemies that were more than 10 times their number, the demons would always make mistakes. But even so, the Lord of Hell, Asmodeus, still accumulated some power. It was an absolutely elite army of devils. He was ready to throw them into the war that would decide the fate of the Abyss and the Baator Inferno. After thousands of years of blood war, the demon lord knew how to transfer the elites to the rear, and Asmodeus knew this very well. So there had always been a legend that in the depths of the Baator Inferno, there was a terrifying demon army that could fight all the way to Mountain Paradise. Asmodeus rarely interfered in the blood war in the Abyss. He only let his underlings attack the Abyss, and no one knew if he had other plans. Dong! 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 Facing the huge demon army, the demon army only sent out a small team of soldiers. They were very clear about the Abyss demons' attrition tactics, and they did not even use the engineering equipment on the Blood War fortress. Is that a bone demon? Sauron was not as familiar with the Baator Inferno as the Abyss, because the more orderly a place was, the stricter the rules were, and the harder it was for adventurers to find a loophole. In the Baator Inferno, there were many places with strict order. The demons did not reject outsiders from other planes, but their attitude was definitely not friendly. In the Abyss, one could wander around as long as one did not provoke some powerful demons. But in the Baator Inferno, one could not do so. The demons' conspiracy made many adventurers tremble in fear. Sauron had been to the Baator Inferno before, but he did not go deep, because the deeper the Baator Inferno went, the more dangerous it was. It was even more dangerous than entering the territory of the demon lord. Bone Devil. It was a type of intermediate demon with a challenge rating of 10 and above. Its innate strength, dexterity, and constitution were 21 and above. Such attributes were not very strong for a demon because there were many demons in the Abyss who were naturally muscular. However, war was not something that could be easily influenced by one person's strength. War was a life and death battle that emphasized discipline and cooperation. A group of bone devils faced the demon army that outnumbered them by 1,000 times. Almost none of them showed fear on their faces. On the contrary, their eyes were filled with contempt. Ice Wall. Ice walls rose on the battlefield. This was the innate spell-like ability of bone devils. They liked to cut up large groups of enemies like this. The huge demon army was divided into chaotic groups, and some even started killing each other. The only ones that weren't affected were the undead cannon fodder. More and more demon lords preferred to use undead instead of demons. Although the low-level undead did not have high intelligence and could only accept simple orders, it was still much better than the demons rushing up in a chaotic swarm. Fear Aura. Another innate ability of bone devils was that they possessed a special aura halo. Fear Aura, innate ability. Bone devils can launch a fear aura with a radius of more than 3 meters in an instant action. Any affected creature must forcibly pass a will immunity check, otherwise it will be affected by the same effect as fear, equivalent to a casting level 7. Creatures that successfully pass the immunity check will no longer be affected by the fear aura of the same bone devil within 24 hours. Other demons are immune to this aura. The immunity difficulty is affected by charm. A weakened version of fear aura. It was not as large as the Son of Fear, and the effect of fear and the difficulty of immunity were completely incomparable. However, it was more than enough to deal with these low-level demon cannon fodder. The bone devils rushed directly to the army that was thousands of times stronger. Any low-level creatures that were close to them fled in fear. Dretches were originally timid creatures. As a result, they lost any effect at all. The bone devils were completely slaughtered. Even after killing more than 10 times the number of enemies, they did not have any casualties. Flames fell from the sky. The Devil Legion seemed to want to eat all these demon cannon fodder. In Sauron's sight, the battlefield was burning with raging flames, and the figures of the demons were easily shuttling through it because most of them were immune to fire damage. However, the demons couldn't do this. Their resistance could only resist a portion of the damage and not be completely immune. Only a small number of demons and special forms like Sauron could be immune to fire. This was the most common tactic of the demons. The battlefield was turned into a sea of fire, and then all the enemies were destroyed little by little. The low-level undead were burned to death in large numbers. Most of the low-level demons had lost their morale. They trampled on each other to escape the battle, but they were ruthlessly killed by the demon warlords behind them. This was a bloody battle. The Blood War was the most terrifying Azura battlefield in the multiverse. Even the gods had to be prepared to face death here. The demons could not hold on any longer. The situation was quite unfavorable from the beginning of the battle. The Devil Legion's main forces had not yet been dispatched, and their own cannon fodder troops had already suffered heavy losses. In the end, the high-grade demons began to send more powerful cannon fodder to the battlefield. They could not sit back and watch the enemy kill all the cannon fodder. With the roar of the Hezru, a group of middle and low-grade demons were dispatched. The figures of Hezru, Vrox, berserk demons, hunters, and so on all appeared in the battle. Some powerful demons seemed to be unable to hold back their nature and joined the battle in advance. And at this time, the Devil Legion was still as motionless as a mountain. In the face of a new wave of attacks from the demon army, the demon elite stayed in place and did not even have the idea of supporting the bone demon army. Fly. Invisibility. Greater Phantom. The bone demons used their own spell-like abilities one after another. They used fly to avoid many enemies, and invisibility easily allowed them to advance and retreat freely. The spirit of fear still covered the battlefield. As long as it existed, all the demons with weak will would be useless. However, at this time, the Devil Legion had changed. Their two wings opened towards the side door, and many middle-grade and high-grade demons flew into the sky. It seemed that they intended to expand the battlefield further. They knew the nature of demons very well. When there was enough chaos, madness would make demons kill each other, which could make it easier for the demons to deal with the enemy. The flames were not enough. The demons liked to cover the whole battlefield with fire. They would use all means to lead the advantage of the battle to their side. The fire was the most obvious advantage. As long as the demons fought in the fire, they would be hurt, but the demons would be unaffected. If the enemy withdrew from the battlefield, then with the chaotic nature of the demons, they would directly collapse and retreat. All they needed to do was to chase and kill the enemies. An undisciplined army was so pitiful. The demons knew very well that once the battle broke out, the demons could only fight to the death. If they could fight, they might be able to defeat the demons. If they could not, it would be a big defeat. If it was the latter, the Devil Legion could win precious time to breathe. A devilish flame ignited. With the actions of the high-grade demons, there seemed to be some different flames on the battlefield. The other demons did not seem to be aware of it, but Sauron, as a flaming demon, felt it very clearly. This was the Hellfire. A magical flame born in the Baator Inferno. Sometimes even low-grade demons could be burned. These flames had more terrible lethality. The casualties of the demons were increasing. But they still did not notice. The timid ones wanted to escape, and the courageous ones just rushed forward. The situation on the battlefield was getting worse and worse. But at this time, Sauron's army suddenly received an order to attack. They needed to surround the enemy from the side and try to eliminate a small group of demons. Chapter 535. The situation on the battlefield had begun to change. The flank where Sauron's army was preparing to attack had sent out new demons, but it was not a very powerful demon, but a group of chain demons. From the outside, the chain devils looked like humans, but their bodies were wrapped in spiked chains. These spiked chains were their clothes, weapons, and armor. Chain demons had special combat skills. They could control 4 chains at the same time. The effect was sometimes equivalent to a long whip, which could entangle the enemy. The challenge rating of chain demons was 6. Although their attributes were not very strong, they were still very troublesome to deal with. The Blood War Legion led by the demons rarely saw the lowest level of lesser demons and imps because bringing these cannon fodder would further increase the logistical pressure of their expedition to the abyss. Moreover, these souls that were not good enough might not be able to advance. Therefore, the lowest level in the Demon Legion was close to the strength of chain demons. In battles where cannon fodder was needed, they would directly use the ability of summon demons. In this way, if the cannon fodder survived, they could directly advance. Cowardly gaze. The situation of the battle was very bad from the beginning. Before the Demon Legion led by Sauron rushed to the enemy, many dretches had already turned and fled. As a demon that was not very powerful, the chain demon did not have the ability of fear spirit. But it had a weakened version of timid gaze, and it still had an obvious suppressive effect on some low-level cannon fodder troops. Especially when the battlefield situation was unfavorable to the demons and it was almost a one-sided massacre, the effect of this ability was even more astonishing. Cowardly gaze, innate ability. Within a distance of 15 meters, any target that is stared at by the chain demon will undergo a test of will. The stare of the chain demon can make the target feel timid and afraid. If the stare fails, the enemy will be affected by negative statuses such as timidity, which will affect their performance in battle and may even directly escape. The difficulty of the test is based on their own charm. A weakened innate ability. In other words, this was a weakened version of fear aura that Sauron's main body had. The fear aura that Sauron's main body had was effective on any creature, but it did not cover a large area and was difficult to resist. Chain demons, on the other hand, had a limited range and was less difficult to resist. They could only be used against low-level demons. Among the innate abilities of the devils, many of them had spell-like effects that made the enemy feel fear. Many middle and high-ranked devils had a weakened version of fear aura. A single chain demon was enough to fight a large number of cannon fodder. Sauron did not have enough intermediate demons as support, and many dretches had already escaped before they even reached the enemy. The situation on the battlefield was very bad. There were raging flames everywhere. Although these flames could not hurt Sauron, they were quite effective against low-level demons. The frenzied slaughter continued. The Devil Legion didn't seem to be worried at all. They only sent out less than a third of their troops, leaving the rest as reserves, ready to face the real attack at any time. The elite troops made up of middle-rank and high-rank demons were the key to the victory. The battle could only rely on Sauron and the dozen or so intermediate demons that he had gathered in advance. A few days ago, the revenge of the Knoll King, Yeenagu, caused heavy losses to the Succubus Legion. Although Sauron was promoted again, in fact, the demon army he commanded did not improve much. Most of these intermediate demons were simple-minded berserk demons and Hezru demons. There was not much skill in commanding them. He could only simply order them to rush in a certain direction. Flame whip. A scorching flame cut through the air. Chain demons were not completely immune to fire damage, and the flame whip itself also carried substantial physical damage. A long sword cut through the cold light. After advancing into the flame demon form, Sauron replaced the original long sword with a large sword that was close to a beheading sword. The demon form of the bottomless abyss was very different. Sauron's current form would not be punished too much if he controlled a two-handed weapon. In the future, the true form of the flame demon would be a small giant 2 or 3 meters tall. The huge beheading sword would be used as a long sword in their hands. Pucci. The head of a chained demon was cut off. The combat power of the demons was not as terrible as imagined, but their cooperation was quite tacit. Sauron had just found a chance to kill a chained demon, and his army was almost defeated. The chained demons knew how to use their advantages and abilities to fight. They knew how to cut and surround important targets. On the other hand, the demons could only rush forward in a mess without any command at all. Killing a chained demon inadvertently attracted more enemies. It seemed that the demons intended to turn around and behead Sauron. A row of data appeared in front of him, killed a middle-grade chained demon. Extracting the target's soul power. You've gained 32 points of soul power. You've successfully absorbed the target's soul power. Your flame demon form has been upgraded. Strange. When Sauron killed the first demon, a row of strange information appeared. He absorbed the bloodline power of the demons when he killed them. It seemed that there was no way to absorb the soul power, so slaughter EXP would be fed back to his body. But now he seemed to be able to directly absorb the soul power of the demons after killing them. This soul power was directly used to strengthen his demonic power, and a chained demon with a challenge rating of about 5 could provide a source of power comparable to a demon with a challenge rating of about 9. Double EXP? Why was this? Was it because of the conflict between demons and demons? Or was it because of the mysterious power in the bloody war? Sauron did not know why, but at least he knew that killing demons could bring a more amazing improvement than demons. Because in front of him, an extremely lucky Dretch killed another injured chained demon under the siege of a group of berserk demons. Then it directly evolved from a Dretch to a new berserk demon. 2 levels in a row. That Dretch skipped the form of a low-grade demon and reached the standard of a middle-grade demon in one breath. Incredible. It was so easy to improve in the bloody war. It seemed that as long as a low-grade demon successfully killed any demon, it could directly advance. Plop. There was a sound of falling to the ground. The berserk demon that had just advanced suddenly split in half, and another dangerous demon appeared behind it. Barb demon, Barba demon. These demons were about 2 meters tall and weighed about 250 pounds. They were very ferocious. They were rare demons with an innate intelligence of only 6 points. But this did not mean that they were not dangerous enough. Because the weapon used by the Barb demon was a machete, it could cause long-lasting purgatory wounds after hitting the enemy. At the same time, they carried toxins. Any enemy that was attacked by them could be infected with a disease that could not be treated by conventional means. Only magic could expel the disease. Finally, these things could go berserk. The Barb demon had the talent ability to berserk. They could activate berserk at least twice a day according to their own ability. This ability was similar to the berserk state of the barbarians. In the berserk state, the Barb demon's strength +4, constitution +4, will +2, and morale +2. At the same time, it slightly reduced its own defense. This berserk state had no sequelae. It was similar to the epic berserk state of the legendary barbarians. The only drawback was that the increase in ability was not as good. A faint light of magic emerged. The figure of the Barb demon suddenly appeared behind Sauron and swung its machete directly. Greater teleportation. The Barb demon had a dangerous spell-like ability, and the effect was equivalent to greater teleportation. Now it appeared directly in front of Sauron. In this case, Sauron could no longer hide his direct strength. A raging fire appeared on his bare chest in an instant. The demon tattoo emitted a faint flame and suddenly turned into a real, flaming demon form. The demon legion wanted to behead him. Chapter 536. Devils were always very good at finding the enemy's weakness on the battlefield. Sauron was the biggest weakness of this group of devils. In their opinion, as long as they beheaded Sauron, the devil army in front of them would definitely spread out. It was because of this devil that these weak enemies could cause them casualties. No matter how suppressed the devils were, they still had the advantage in numbers. Concentrating their forces to kill an enemy would cause them a lot of casualties. Even if it was 10 times the loss in exchange for a chained devil, it was still worth it for Sauron. You want to behead me? Sauron had always been used to beheading his enemies. He did not expect to be the one being beheaded this time. He did not have the strength of his main body and could not hide in the shadows. Therefore, in the face of this situation, the first thing he did was to activate his flaming body and quickly retreat to the rear. At the same time, he pulled over the devils he summoned and controlled to resist. Barbed devils and chained devils were the main fighting force of the devil army. If the barbed devils were more complete, they would have the ability, greater teleportation, which was close to that of a high-ranked devil. In the past, they used the teleportation ability to leave the battle and continue to fight after recovering from their injuries. However, the current situation was that they were using greater teleportation to split up and surround Sauron from all four directions. The devils did not believe that this devil, who seemed to be the leader, could escape in this situation. I can only fight head-on. The real test of Sauron's peak fighting skills had come. About 5 barbed devils surrounded him. The nearby devils could not be counted on as cannon fodder. It was fortunate that they could delay the chained devils and get closer. Sauron did not have the ability of his main body. If he fought in his current flaming devil form, he would definitely die if he was surrounded. This was the greatest danger of the Blood War. You could not be sure when you would become the target of the high-ranked devils, because the devils knew that once the leader was killed, the devil army would automatically collapse. Scorching flames ignited on Sauron's body. Because the entire battlefield was set ablaze by the devils, his true form of the flaming devil was not very eye-catching. This should be the most fortunate thing. Left. Sauron did not continue to retreat. Instead, he suddenly pounced on the barbed devil on the left. He flicked his wrist and lashed out with the flame whip. At the same time, he flapped the demonic wings on his back to jump higher. He crossed a distance of nearly 30 meters and slashed at the enemy in front of him. The attributes of the barbed demons were not very strong. Their greatest ability was to go berserk. Sauron had gained some advantage in size after advancing to a flaming demon. Relying on the demon wings, he could achieve instant high-speed dash. Clang! Sparks flew. Sauron slashed his sword at the barbed devil in front of him. The barbed devil brandished his long sword to parry the attack, but to his surprise, the moment his attack was parried, Sauron lashed out with the flame whip, wrapping around the barbed devil's body and locking the upper half of his arm. The flame whip was not a pure energy form. The flame whip summoned by the fire demon was regarded as a natural magic weapon. It was a summoning equipment with a form. One of the signature abilities of the Baelor was to use the flame whip to entangle the enemy. Poochie! Blood splattered out of the wound. Sauron would never miss such a good opportunity. He instantly waved his sword and slashed at the enemy's head. The sword form, beheading, technique broke out and chopped off the enemy's head on the spot. Be careful. A warning in the infernal language came from behind. The demons obviously found that the demon in front of them was a little different. His combat skills were quite superb, and he knew how to use tactics and advantages to deal with the enemy. He even knew how to feint and attack their weakest point. Of the 5 barbed devils that were just teleported to behead, the one Sauron killed was the weakest. A hole appeared in the encirclement. Sauron jumped up and wanted to break out, but at this moment, a chained devil suddenly rushed over. Accompanied by flying cold chains, it directly wrapped around his arm. Damn it! Sauron roared and slashed down with his sword. Sparks flew in front of his eyes, but the +1 rare weapon in his hand could not cut it. Weapon. Weapon, weapon, weapon. As a profession that valued close combat, Sauron once again tasted the pain of not having a suitable weapon. The long sword in his hand could not cut the chains of the chained devil. If only he had icing death in his hands. Without giving Sauron a chance to think, the barbed devils behind him were getting closer and closer. In desperation, Sauron could only rush back to the chained devil in front of him. A flaming whip lashed out fiercely. Flames roared. Seeing that the barbed devils were getting closer and closer, Sauron's peak combat skills completely broke out. The flame whip attacked from an extremely tricky angle, and at the same time, he waved his long sword and used the sword form, spinning strike, technique. Poochie. Plop. A bloody wound appeared on Sauron's back. The nearest barbed devil directly slashed his back with its sword, and even the white bones could be seen after the flesh was cut open. However, in front of Sauron, the chained devil that entangled him was instantly killed. In the face of Sauron's sudden attack, it could not even withstand a round of attacks. After all, Sauron's challenge rating had exceeded level 10, and he was close to the elite form of Flaming Devil. A row of data appeared in front of him. Intermediate chained devil killed. Extracting target's soul power. You've obtained 36 points of soul power. You've successfully absorbed target's soul power. Your Flaming Devil form has been upgraded. Unknown mutation. Your soul power has undergone an unknown mutation. Part of your ability has undergone a fusion mutation. Unknown power triggered. Your body has undergone a fusion mutation. You've learned the special ability, Cowardly Gaze. Unknown mutation. Main body's soul power has been transferred. The special ability, Cowardly Gaze, you've learned has transformed into Fear Gaze. In an instant, a trace of blood-red light appeared in Sauron's eyes. Under his sudden burst of terrifying gaze, the barbed devils that were approaching behind him suddenly stopped. Sauron's gaze was so terrifying that it was as if they were facing a powerful archdemon or even some terrifying evil god. The blade of the sword flashed a cold light. Sauron flapped his injured demonic wings and flew over, seizing the moment when the enemies were frightened by the fear gaze. He once again beheaded a barbed devil that was close to him. At this time, the demons in front of him woke up one by one. 1 against 3. The situation was still very unfavorable for Sauron. The wound on his back was still bleeding, but the powerful recovery ability of the demons was also in effect. He had less than 30% chance of winning against 3 barbed devils, but if he could defeat them one by one, with the help of Fear Gaze, he was very likely to wipe them out. The power of the demons seemed to have triggered the soul power of the main body. The innate ability of the chained devil, Cowardly Gaze, caused Sauron's ability to be upgraded for some unknown reason, directly inheriting the power of the main body, Fear Gaze. In this way, he really had some confidence in reversing the situation of being hunted down and beheaded. Chapter 537. Summon Demon. Now, even an idiot could tell that the flaming demon in front of them was not the same as the demons in their past memories. Facing Sauron, who was showing signs of advancing, the barbed demon did not hesitate to send out 2 people to contain him, while the other was ready to use the ability to summon demons. The barbed demon could summon some low-grade demons as fighters, and there was also a 50% chance of summoning another barbed demon. As long as they could summon a chained demon or a barbed demon to entangle Sauron, then the advantage would return to their side. Fear Gaze. Sauron glanced at the other party, and the summoning ritual that the barbed demon was performing was suddenly interrupted. It even spat out a mouthful of blood. Very strange. Sauron's Fear Gaze seemed to have inherited some of the effects of the main body, and the difficulty of immunity was extremely high, at least the difficulty of legendary level immunity. When the barbed demons touched his eyes, their expressions were as if they had seen a terrible evil god. Sauron was extremely suspicious that this was related to the divine power of his main body. Although this avatar was in the form of a demon, part of the soul power came from the origin of the gods. Even if it did not inherit much divine power from the main body, it looked like an evil god. This was a connection on the level of the soul. Even Sauron could not figure it out now, and it would be difficult for other gods and demon lords to figure it out. Because for the gods, the soul was also a very mysterious thing. The soul was the most important currency, resource, and power of the gods. Even many gods did not dare to touch the water of the Styx easily. Perhaps only by mastering part of the death clergy could it be possible to touch on the most mysterious knowledge of the multiverse. The barbed demons did not dare to look into Sauron's eyes. No demon in front of them dared to look directly into Sauron's eyes. They even felt that Sauron's eyes were more oppressive than some Duke demons. In this way, their strength in battle was severely affected. Dang, dang, dang. In such a situation, Sauron naturally wouldn't give up so easily. He flapped his demonic wings and moved at high speed, using the airflow to speed up his flight. From time to time, he would let the enemy meet his gaze. Then, the barbed devil in front of him would show a horrified expression. Whether it was its attack speed or strength, it was obviously much weaker. Sometimes, it would even be in a temporary state of rigidity. Poochie. Another devil fell to Sauron's sword. The more Sauron fought, the braver he became. On the other hand, the demons in front of him were somewhat restrained. They even had the intention to escape. He couldn't let them escape. How could Sauron allow the power of the soul to slip away? Killing demons in the Blood War would give him double the power of a demon. This would help him quickly gain a foothold in the abyss. He did not know if he would be so lucky in the next Blood War, or if he would encounter a stronger demon. So now that there was an opportunity to kill an enemy, he could not miss it. The increase in strength from killing evil devils was simply too fast. It seemed that in the rules of the Blood War, there was a huge power from the abyss that helped the demons absorb the souls of the demons. It was as if they had the power of the slaughter, divine domain. Another barbed devil fell. The flames on Sauron's body became more and more vigorous. His bones made a slight sound. He was very close to evolving into the elite form of the flaming devil. Based on the current situation, as long as the creature reached level 15, it was almost time to evolve. Bang! Not far away, there was the sound of a heavy object being sent flying. A Hezru fell into the flames, and then there was a shrill scream. A tall bone devil directly nailed it to death in the flames with a sharp sword. The flames burned around it, but it was not affected at all. After the bone devil killed a Hezru, it glanced around and quickly found Sauron's figure, as well as the corpses of the barbed devils that fell around him. This was a bone devil more than 3 meters tall. It should weigh more than 500 pounds. The weapon it used was a two-handed sword stained with demon blood. There were almost no wounds on the bone devil's body, which meant that it had not been hurt from the beginning to the end. The bone devil was also known as the Othello devil, which was the backbone of the Devil Legion. The one in front of him obviously belonged to the rank because it had a strange dark red armor on its body. This was the steel forging process from the Baator Inferno. The Baator Inferno had a large number of munitions factories. The core combat power of the Devil Legion was all well-equipped, which was a far cry from the messy equipment of the demons. Flaming Devil. A cruel smile appeared in the eyes of the Bone Devil, and it rushed towards Sauron in an instant. As the basic form of the Baelor, the Flaming Devil was also relatively rare among the demons. It was obviously more interesting to be able to kill such an enemy than to kill those boring middle-grade demons. Greater teleportation. The Bone Devil was a very terrible enemy. The biggest difference from other middle-grade and low-grade demons was that the Bone Devil had a cheat-like talent ability, cast at will, greater teleportation. Yes. You didn't read it wrong, it was really, cast at will. Unlike other demons, the number of times the Bone Devil could use greater teleportation in a day was based on its own energy. As long as it had energy, it could keep using greater teleportation. In addition, it had other spell-like abilities, including Ice Wall, Dimensional Anchor, Flight, Invisibility, and so on. The enemy appeared in an instant. Facing the Bone Devil that had a straight-up challenge level, Sauron could not help but feel nervous. His muscles were tense, and he was ready to fight at any time. Fortunately, he also knew a lot about the demons. The Bone Devil's sudden approach with the help of a greater teleportation was completely within his expectations. Sauron flapped his demonic wings and moved half a meter horizontally, avoiding the attack quite easily. It seemed that because of a pair of demonic wings, he could do more dodging actions. Aura of fear. A frightening cold breath spread. Facing Sauron, the Bone Devil in front of him did not hesitate to use its talent ability. A row of data appeared in front of Sauron's eyes, attacked by Bone Devil. You are affected by the enemy's talent ability, Aura of Fear. Triggered Test of Will. Test of Will passed. You completely ignored the effect of the opponent's aura of fear. It was completely ineffective. It seemed that Sauron, who had inherited the soul power of the main body, was also quite amazing in terms of will. The Bone Devil's aura of fear had no effect at all. This kind of talent ability that greatly interfered with other demons, Sauron now completely ignored it. The flame whip cut through the air. Sauron and the Bone Devil carried out the first round of tentative fighting. The strength gap between the two sides was not too big. Sauron's current challenge level was about level 10, and the Bone Devil's challenge level should be about level 12. In terms of attributes, the Bone Devil had the advantage, but Sauron was also immune to fire damage and did not have to worry about the terrain. Because at this moment, the battlefield had turned into a sea of fire. Hee hee. The Bone Devil looked at Sauron with eyes full of hatred. It hated other creatures, especially demons that fought all year round. It slowly said, "What an interesting fire demon. This way, you can't be allowed to grow." Demons couldn't be allowed to grow stronger. In the Abyss Blood War, any potential demon seed should be strangled in the cradle. The devils had always been committed to killing those demons who performed well in the Blood War. They beheaded, sniped, assassinated, and so on. It was almost unimaginable. There were not many demons near Sauron. They were either burned to death by the raging fire or had been defeated to the rear. The main army of the demon army still did not move. It was not known whether the higher demons in command were in conflict or waiting for a more suitable time. In name, the highest commander was the Radiance Nun, but the commanders of other demon lords might not listen to her orders. There was no support and no cannon fodder. Sauron seemed to want to fight the Bone Devil in front of him, who was stronger and better equipped. What made him most afraid of the other party was the greater teleportation that could be cast at will, so Sauron actually counterattacked in this situation and closed the distance with the enemy in front of him to fight hand to hand. Now he was fighting with his long-term accumulation. This demon incarnation did not have enough trump cards to turn the tables. He could only rely on combat skills and vitality to fight with the other party to see who could not hold on first. Chapter 538. Clang. Clang. Plop. Traces of blood overflowed from Sauron's naked chest. The blood seemed to make the fire on his body more violent, as if adding oil to the fire. There was a trace of horror on Bone's face, and there was a wound on his abdomen. In a situation where it had an obvious advantage in all aspects, it actually lost to the opponent in combat skills, and its injuries were obviously more serious. It did not know what kind of person the demon in front of it was when it was alive, to be able to inherit such powerful combat skills. Perhaps it was a profession close to legendary when it was alive. In this case, it was even more impossible to let him grow. If a mortal's soul fell into the abyss after death, it was still possible to inherit some memories and combat skills. For example, when a high-grade warrior's soul fell into the abyss after death, he could use the weapon he was best at in his previous life or some combat skills. It was possible to awaken part of his memory and restore some combat instincts accumulated when he was alive. Sauron in front of Bone was undoubtedly such an existence. This kind of demon was too easy to grow. If it did not kill him now, he might become a legendary Balrog in the future. The Devil Legion was already at an absolute disadvantage in terms of numbers. If there were too many demons like Sauron, then the pace of attacking the abyss would definitely be hindered. The devils would never let an enemy with potential grow stronger. It wanted to kill Sauron in front of it. For this, it was even ready to gamble with its life. If it succeeded, maybe the enemy's soul would bring it new powerful strength. Clang. 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 The flame whip swept through the air. Sauron and Bone were fighting with their lives at this moment. They were ready to kill the enemy in front of them. Both of their injuries were getting worse, and the balance of victory and defeat seemed to be 50-50. Woo! 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 A bleak horn sounded. When Sauron and Bone were almost engaged in a fierce battle, the main army of the Devil Legion finally moved. The high-grade succubus flew into the sky, the six-armed snake demon with six long swords swooped down at the same time, the soul sentinel's figure covered the left and right, and the Glabrizu's giant body began to move toward the center of the battlefield. But the most eye-catching thing was not these. With the light of spells, 7 or 8 Baylor figures appeared on the battlefield full of fire. One of the Baylor was so eye-catching. It did not hold a flame whip or a beheading sword, but a huge death scythe. The pitch-black blade was burning with a raging fire, but it was not a fiery red color. Instead, it was a kind of demonic black flame. It was a kind of flame that seemed to burn the soul. Poochie. With a splash of blood, the Baylor instantly split a bone demon in half. Ha ha ha. Shrill laughter, this Baylor rampaged within the Devil Legion. Relying on its innate ability to teleport to avoid the enemy's sniping. This was a Baylor with a creature level above 25. It might be more powerful than the one Sauron's original body had dealt with. The most frightening thing was the weapon it held. It had the breath of the underworld, like the water of the Styx, which made demons and devils not dare to approach it easily. The material plane was connected to the shadow plane, and the shadow plane was close to the spiritual world. The spiritual world was closest to the Death Kingdom, underworld. That was the territory of the Death God. The water of the Styx that flowed in the bottomless abyss and the Baator Inferno came from the underworld. The Death God was responsible for maintaining the operation of the multiverse. Sometimes the ferryman of the Styx would decide where a soul should go. Was it the kingdom of the gods or the evil abyss of hell? This Baylor was holding a weapon from the underworld. It was a terrifying weapon filled with the power of death. This weapon could even threaten some weak gods. No one dared to take its attack head-on. Even the high-grade demons could avoid this terrifying scythe of death. At this moment, this Baylor was just like Sauron when he held the Holy Avenger, and defeated a troop of the Devil Legion with an overwhelming advantage. The real battle had begun. The high-grade demons were the ones who decided the outcome of the Abyss Blood War. They were the backbone of the bottomless abyss. Blood was flowing. Sauron was now seriously injured. Fortunately, he was at the edge of the battlefield. Now the whole bloody battle was focused on the center. The Baylor's sudden attack caused the Devil Legion to suffer heavy losses. The six-armed snake demons were all killing machines when they approached. The soul judgment demons were on the left and right. The Glabrizu's huge body that was as heavy as 5,000 pounds was amazing. When the real main force of the demons appeared, the battle was not so easy for the devils. Boom! 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 The dull war drums sounded. The Taurens in full armor also joined the battle. Some huge meatballs appeared from the side of the battlefield. They floated in the air and shot out deadly rays of light. Beholder! The entire Abyss Blood War was in an uproar. What did the devils do this time? Why did the great matriarch of the Eye Demons, the demon lord of the sixth layer of the bottomless abyss, 10,000 Eyes Abyss, and the supreme ruler of the Eye Demons, send an army to join the bloody battle? Something very serious must have happened. Now, even the confused devils understood that a demon lord who rarely interfered in the Abyss Blood War suddenly sent an army to join the battle. Something terrible must have happened behind the scenes. Even the great matriarch of the Eye Demons felt threatened by the devil's conspiracy and joined the battle. Something big must have happened to the bottomless abyss. Countless rays of light shot out. The Eye Demon army appeared from the teleportation circle. The leader was the terrifying Elder's Eye. Apart from that, there were also a large number of Eye Demons, Gauss Eye Demons, Abyss Eyes, and even Eye Demon Observer. The battle became more intense. Facing such a situation, the Devil Legion stood motionless outside the city gate as if their iron-blooded discipline had seeped into the depths of their souls. The Devil Legion had suffered heavy losses and the elites of the Devil Legion had also joined the battle. Horn demons, ice demons, lustful demons, fallen angels, and Bartholomew. The senior demons used their teleportation abilities to support the battle and forcefully resisted the Devil Legion's attack. The Devil Legion's casualties were increasing. This battle of attrition was disadvantageous for them, but they didn't seem to have the intention to retreat at all, as though a conspiracy was brewing. Plop. Sauron's injuries worsened, but the Bone Demon wasn't any better. Facing such a crazy battle style, the Bone Demon revealed a trace of fear in its eyes because it felt that if this continued, the enemies might perish together with it. This wasn't worth it. As a demon, it wasn't as crazy as the devils. Besides, it believed that if it was possible, the enemies before it would perish together with it. That was why it wavered. It wanted to retreat to the rear to heal its injuries because it wasn't willing to perish together with a flame demon. But just as it was about to retreat with its teleportation ability, something unexpected happened. The severely injured flaming demon in front of it suddenly burst with power and charged at it again. The flaming demon waved its flaming whip and wrapped around the flaming demon. Then, the flaming demon waved its sword and slashed at the flaming demon's head. The battle ended. Sauron gasped for breath and blood flowed out of his mouth. The flames on his body were a little dim, as if he had exhausted all his strength. However, when he killed the Bone Demon in front of him, a little bit of soul power that was invisible to the naked eye entered his body, and Sauron's body instantly reignited with a raging fire. A row of data appeared before his eyes: killed Bone Demon. Extracting target spiritual energy. You've received 108 points of spiritual energy. You've successfully absorbed target spiritual energy. Your Flame Demon form has been upgraded. Creature level increased. Your current creature level is level 15. Form upgrade. You've evolved into the elite form of Flame Demon. Automatically learned a new ability, Bind. Spell-like ability, Fireball, has been upgraded. Current usage is 3 times per day. Dominate Demon ability has been upgraded. Summon Demon ability has been upgraded. Unknown mutation. Your spiritual energy has undergone an unknown mutation. Some abilities have undergone a fusion mutation. Unknown power triggered. Fusion mutation has occurred. Unknown mutation. Main body's spiritual energy has been imported. You've learned a new ability, Fear Aura. With a crackling sound, Sauron's body further changed. The demon horns became thicker and stronger, and the demon wings seemed to have grown further. His body gradually transformed into a large creature like the Flame Demon. The number of demon tattoos on his body increased, and the range of flames expanded. His attributes were improved, and his vitality seemed to have become more amazing. Of course. The most obvious change was that there was an invisible energy around Sauron's body. The power of fear. The fear aura that the Bone Demon possessed seemed to have been integrated by him for some reason and became his own innate ability. Fear aura, innate ability. Any enemy within 5 meters of you must undergo a compulsory test of will. If they can't pass the test, the enemy will be affected by an effect similar to fear. The casting level of this type of magic ability is equivalent to your creature level, current level, 15. This ability cannot be upgraded through conventional means. Fear aura. Even Sauron was very surprised that he had automatically learned the ability of Fear aura, and it seemed to be more powerful than the Bone Demon. Incredible. It seemed that he could get more obvious improvement in power in bloody battles. Chapter 539. Sauron was seriously injured. Even if he had evolved into the elite form of the Flaming Demon, only a small part of his injuries had healed. It was quite dangerous to challenge a more powerful enemy. Sauron's original body could do it because he had enough abilities, good equipment, and other means to turn the tables. But now the new demon incarnation didn't have so many trump cards, and the abilities were basically not trained. Needless to say, the only advantage was the inherited combat skills. At the most critical moment, Sauron was even almost beaten into a near-death state by the Bone Demon, but fortunately, he survived. After killing an officer-level Bone Demon, Sauron's ability improved greatly. The Flame Demon's Entanglement ability was a very useful combat skill that could directly trap some enemies with insufficient strength. Sauron's first few battles were with the help of the flame whip. If he evolved into a Baelor in the future, he could directly strangle some weak enemies. For now, the important abilities Sauron still lacked from becoming a Baelor were proficiency in dual wielding, telekinesis, instant ability, powerful cleave, fierce attack, proficiency in attacking first, and so on. These abilities would probably have to wait until he evolved into the Flame Demon form before he could try to master them. Entanglement, special ability. The +1 flame whip of the Flaming Demon can entangle the opponent like a net attack. The flame whip has 20 HP and doesn't need to be folded. Once the whip hits the target must go through a strength test with itself. If you win, you can pull the target to your body full of flames. The entangled target will be temporarily restrained, and enemies whose physique and strength are crushed will trigger an additional test of death. The elite form of the Flaming Demon inadvertently had a part of the power of the Flame Demon. Although the ability to entangle was very useful, what Sauron wanted the most was not this, but the greater teleportation that could only be mastered by middle to high-grade demons. This was the real core ability. If he could comprehend the greater teleportation, Sauron could cut in and leave the battlefield at any time, whether it was healing, killing, or retreating. It would be quite convenient. From the looks of it, he seemed to be a little short of accumulation. Note, most high-level demons and devils have the ability to teleport. After evolving into his elite form, Sauron's basic attributes and HP had been strengthened. His height had also grown close to 2.5 meters, making him look like a small giant. Once he evolved into his Flame Demon form, Sauron's height would reach over 3 meters. At the same time, he would be able to suppress medium-sized enemies in all aspects. This body type was not suitable for delicate combat, but if it was a technique like the sword form, beheading, then the power would become quite huge. Sauron needed some time to get used to his combat abilities. Every time his body size changed, there would be a period of time for him to adapt. Therefore, he quickly retreated. When Sauron retreated from the battlefield, he found that the center of the battlefield had become a mess. There were two places that attracted the most attention. One was the Eye Devil army that rarely appeared in bloody battles, and the other was a Baelor with a death scythe. What a powerful weapon! A very, very powerful weapon. Without even activating his perception, Sauron could feel the powerful force contained in the Grim Reaper's scythe burning with black flames. He was not sure if it was a divine artifact. But he was sure that its real power would not be weaker than a divine artifact. This kind of weapon from the underworld rarely fell into the abyss, and it seemed to be a weapon specially prepared for the Baelor after modification. The demon warlord did not stop Sauron from retreating. In fact, there were not many living demons on his side of the battlefield. At this time, he had a little time to heal himself, and at the same time, he retreated to the rear of the army and checked his attributes after his evolution. Name, Sauron. Race, Demon. Form, Flame Demon, Grade 4, Elite, Large Creature, Creature Level 15. Attributes, Strength 25, Agility 20, Constitution 22, Intelligence 16, Wisdom 18, Charm 20. Alignment, Lawful Evil. Note, other demons will be slightly hostile to your actions. HP, 31235. Demonic Power, 03000. Skills, Sneak 125, Deception 75, Negotiation 85, Literacy 100, Intimidation 210, Spell Identification 90, Use Magic Device 90, Listen 85, Detect 85, Search 70. Abilities, Flame Body, Flame Whip, Entanglement, Demon Claws, +1 Natural Magic Weapon, Demon Skin, Damage Reduction +10, Demon Resistance, all resistances +10. Abilities, Multi-Attack, Weapon Mastery, Long Sword, Exotic Weapon Mastery, Long Whip. Spell-like abilities, Fear, Fireball, 3 times a day, Dominate Demon, once a day, Burning Hand, Summon Demon, Telepathy. His attributes had been further improved because of the change in form. Sauron had now changed from medium creature to large creature. The most obvious change was not the various basic attributes that had been increased, but one of Sauron's abilities. His intimidation had suddenly skyrocketed to 210 points, which was almost comparable to the intimidation ability of the main body. It was incredible. Sauron himself did not know why intimidation suddenly increased so much. Could it be that his current appearance was very scary? Sauron did not have a mirror around him, so he could not see his current appearance. However, when he reached out and touched it, it seemed that the changes were not very big. He still looked like a hybrid between a half-elf and a demon, like a purgatory demon hybrid. Other than his sharp ears and dark red skin, there were no obvious changes in his appearance. The outline of his face was still more humanoid, unlike the other demons with green faces and fangs that bared their fangs and brandished their claws. It was just that his body size had increased from 1 to 1.5, and his muscles were full of explosive pressure. Seems like it will be much easier to lead demons in the future. In an extremely chaotic place like the bottomless abyss, negotiation was definitely not as useful as intimidation and deception. As long as his intimidation ability was high enough, it would be much easier to control other demons. This might be the bonus of the elite template. Elite monsters were originally small bosses. As Sauron retreated to the rear, the nearby demons opened up a path for him. Even the Hezru who was hostile to him did not dare to look straight into Sauron's eyes. There was even a trace of reverence on their faces when they approached him. As for the other low-level demons, if they were not careful and were stared at by Sauron, they would tremble in fear. Even if they were not the low-level demons under Sauron's command, he seemed to be able to command them now. As for the specific changes, he would have to slowly figure it out in the future. The demon army's casualties were increasing. The scales of victory seemed to be tilted to the demon army's side. The six-armed snake demons tore apart the demon army's formation, and some had even rushed to the rear. The Baelor's figure constantly disappeared and reappeared. Every time it appeared, it would take the life of a demon. The demon army was the most terrifying long-range force. The omnipresent rays made it impossible for the demons to get close. Most of the demons at the rear were closing in. A large number of middle-level demons acted as the core and crushed the demon army. As long as there were loopholes in the demons' formation, the huge number of demons could drown them. But the uneasiness in Sauron's heart grew stronger. For the past 1,000 years, the demons had always lost more than they won. Such a situation made him feel strange everywhere. There were too few centaurs and the core troops of the Baelor's demons were nowhere to be seen. Although there were many middle-level and high-level demons, the true elites did not seem to be here. There were also no signs of the Hell demon generals and the top-notch blood armies that they led. There must be other battles breaking out. Either the demons were hiding some conspiracy, or their true goal was somewhere else. Roar. A deep roar sounded from the distant horizon. Roar. 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 The roar was so familiar to Sauron that he couldn't help but feel goosebumps all over his body. He retreated almost instantly without turning back. Dragons. Dragons. Many, many dragons. Some dragons appeared in the distant sky. Red dragons, white dragons, green dragons, blue dragons, and black dragons. The 5-color dragons of the evil alignment seemed to have all appeared at this moment. Adult dragons appeared on the edge of the battlefield, flew from the back of the Blood Fortress, and then swooped down toward the demon army. A terrible dragon's breath covered the battlefield. It was like the most ruthless slaughter, crushing the demon army's attack in an instant. The Baelor, who was advancing triumphantly at the beginning, almost turned around and ran as soon as he saw the situation was not right. The 6-armed snake demon was heavily surrounded, and the Soul Judgment demon and the Glabrizu were also retreating quickly. The demons' conspiracy. They actually invited the 5-color dragons as helpers. At least 20 adult dragons appeared in front of them. This kind of terrible combat power could completely determine the outcome of a bloody battle. Mother of evil dragons, Tiamat. The god that the five-colored dragons served, the five-headed dragon with lesser divine power. Its strength was as high as 49 points. It was a powerful evil god that lived in the Bator Inferno. Mother of evil dragons, itself was a terrible five-headed dragon, and it had the power of a god. For a long time. The number of times that she could be persuaded to participate in the bloody battle could be counted on one hand, and the situation in front of them was obviously her doing. Because other than the mother of evil dragons, Sauron really couldn't think of anyone else who could control the red dragons, green dragons, blue dragons, black dragons, and white dragons at the same time. The five-colored dragons were not united internally. There was only one person who could make them fight together, and that was the mother of evil dragons, Tiamat. The outcome of the battlefield was already decided. Unless a demon lord appeared, or a god incarnation appeared, it was impossible for the demons to defeat so many adult dragons. Sauron was retreating quickly. However, after seeing so many five-colored dragons, he didn't have much fear in his mind. Instead, he felt very regretful. He murmured, "All the five-colored dragons are here. If my original body was on the battlefield, I can probably complete the Dragon Slayer, with the help of my divine power. What a pity." Chapter 540. Dragons rarely participated in the Abyss Blood War. Because the Abyss Blood War was a competition of population, and the population of dragons happened to be the smallest. The devils must have paid a huge price to invite the mother of evil dragons, Tiamat, to fight for so many dragons. Before the outbreak of the Avatar crisis, almost no adventurers could go deep into the abyss, so Sauron did not remember what happened. But after the outbreak of the Avatar crisis, the scale of the Abyss Blood War decreased a lot. Because the Avatar crisis weakened the barrier of the plane, it was easier for demons and devils to go to other worlds. There were other worlds to conquer, which naturally reduced the conflict of the Blood War. This should be the last wave of large-scale blood war, and then there would be a 2-year period of relaxation. The attention of the Abyss and the Bator Inferno would be transferred to other planes. Finally. In fact, according to the normal historical trend, the Abyss was eventually overthrown by the Bator Inferno. The reason was simple. Order and chaos were opposite. Since the birth of civilization, the first generation of demons had been beating the ancient gods of order, and then the second generation of demons, Orbis, continued to beat the new gods of order. Finally, when the third generation of demons, Tanith-Re, appeared, the power of order finally became strong with the birth of civilization. Especially the fall and rise of the Lord of Hell, Asmodeus, he single-handedly provoked the war between order and chaos. Neither order nor chaos could be eliminated, and one could only suppress the other. The first generation of demons was born from the source of chaos, and they inherited the most powerful power. Although the second generation of Orbis was born weaker, they were similar to the Burning Legion. Their chaotic nature did not destroy themselves, but instead, they concentrated their hatred on the power of order, and even fought all the way to Mountain Paradise. Before the birth of the ancient civilization, the main battlefield of the demons had always been in the upper plane. It was not the first time that they attacked Mountain Paradise and the Temple of Order. Many of the ancient gods' corpses floating in the astral world were the achievements of the first and second generation of demons. The gods were beginning to be afraid of death. Because of fear, they created the original ancient angel, which was the predecessor of the Lord of Hell, Asmodeus. As for the third generation of Tanith-Re demons, they were demons that evolved from flesh and blood. They had the most terrifying and largest number. The changes in the rules of the bottomless abyss led to an endless stream of souls that could give birth to demons, and the number was growing larger and larger. In the beginning, Demon Orbis, who only wanted to create a batch of slaves, was actually defeated by these creatures. The second generation demons were overwhelmed by a huge number of Tanith-Re demons. The rules of the abyss were reshuffled, and the bloody war changed the battlefield. The Tanith-Re demons rose in the bottomless abyss, and the second generation of demons, the Orbis demons, retreated from the stage of history. The essence of chaos began to move towards an even crazier realm. The infighting continued, and the internal strife continued. Countless souls had countless possibilities. The existence of the Tana demons may never be united because they were demons evolved from the power of the body by the Orbis demons. The terrible number of Tana demons had divided the power of the origin of chaos, and the will of the bottomless abyss had become chaotic. Hundreds of millions of souls were constantly reincarnating and evolving, and the huge power of the bottomless abyss was divided among these countless souls. The number of the first-generation demons was only a few 100,000. They killed many ancient gods of order, and the corpses of the ancient gods were still floating in the astral world. The number of the second-generation Orbis demons might be tens of millions. They had once fought their way to mountain paradise and made the gods of order very embarrassed. The number of the third-generation Tana demons was billions, tens of billions, or even hundreds of billions. The bottomless abyss had many unexplored planes and spaces. These places also had reincarnation of souls. Just the 666 floors of the abyss that were currently known had a population of tens of billions of demons. The Tana demons also wanted to attack the multiverse, but as soon as they went out, they were beaten back to the bottomless abyss by the wind elemental army. The huge population and chaotic nature had completely led the bottomless abyss to an unpredictable future. It was a completely different concept for a million demons to share the power and for this power to be concentrated on a single demon. The fragile souls from other planes did not have enough potential at all. They were useless except for completing the evolution and reincarnation of the bottomless abyss. The meaning of life was to spend time killing and killing each other. Only a small number of excellent souls could grow up to be the demon lords of the bottomless abyss and establish the rules they wanted in a territory. Time passed. The Nether River changed from a small stream to a huge river that ran through the bottomless abyss and the Bator Inferno. Countless souls were transported to these two lower planes. No one knew what kind of secrets were hidden behind the fall of the Orbis demons and the rise of the Tana demons. But the rest of the multiverse undoubtedly ushered in a precious and long-lasting peace. The Rise of the Tana demons and the Evolution of the Nether River, Volume 12, Chapter 6. There was no way to calculate how many demons there were. Just in the bloody battlefield of the bottomless abyss, the number of demons had always been dozens of times that of the Devil Legion. In other plane battlefields, such as the Grey Wilderness, the Azura Field, the Scorched Hell, and so on, there were still a large number of demons reincarnating in these places close to the lower planes. It was once said that the number of demons could account for more than 1/5 of the total population of the multiverse. No one could calculate whether this was the case or not. Because this population also included goblins, kobolds, and other monsters that were born like weeds every year. Now, the massive demon army had collapsed. The emergence of the dragon army crushed the demons' courage to continue fighting. Under the terrifying dragon breath, the low-level demons collapsed to the ground in droves. Under the joint dragon breath of dozens of 5-colored dragons, a 10-kilometer-long corridor of death was instantly cleared out on the battlefield. Not only that, but they also turned around and used their dragon breath to sweep in from other directions. The demon army retreated quietly. These cunning demons were ready to escape as soon as they realized that the situation wasn't right. Many Baylor demons had left the battlefield and most of the 6-armed snake demons were left behind. They were heavily surrounded by the Devil Legion and it seemed like their chances of survival were very low. Sauron was retreating. The situation on the battlefield had turned upside down. There was no meaning in staying behind. Roar. Dull dragon roars could be heard. After 3 waves of dragon breath, the Dragon Legion began to disperse and eliminate the enemies in the sky. Not many demons could fight with dragons in the sky. The difference in size between the two sides was enough to crush them. Plop. In front of Sauron, there was a cloud of dust. A seductive figure fell directly from the sky and smashed a pit in the ground. The dragon was approaching. A white arm stretched out from the pit in front of Sauron, and then a superior succubus covered in blood got up. She had terrible scars left by the dragon claws. The demonic wings behind her seemed to have been broken, and she had completely lost the ability to fly. Facing an adult blue dragon in the distance, a trace of fear appeared on the charming face of the superior succubus. But when her eyes fell on Sauron next to her, a glimmer of hope of survival suddenly appeared in her dreamy eyes. Superior charm. The superior succubus in front of him had a seductive smile on her mouth. She said to Sauron with a magnetic voice, "Protect me. Go and block the dragon behind me." The firebird had arrived, and the figure of the adult dragon was getting closer and closer. A trace of panic appeared on the charming face of the superior succubus, and she almost immediately turned around and ran toward the rear. There was still a chance. As long as the cannon fodder in front of her could block the dragon for a while, she could safely leave the battlefield. The most important thing now was to get away. Poochie. Blood splattered out of the wound. The exquisite body of the superior succubus suddenly stiffened. She looked down at her chest, and a long sword with burning flames pierced through her heart. When she turned her head and looked behind her, Sauron's eyes, which were blurred at first, were already clear. Everything just now was a disguise. When the superior succubus thought that he was under charm and was ready to block the dragon behind her, Sauron directly pierced her heart. "I'm not cannon fodder." Sauron slowly pulled out his long sword and looked coldly at the body of the superior succubus on the ground. He said lightly, "Besides, I hate it when people use charm on me." Just a moment ago, a data prompt appeared in front of Sauron's eyes. When he realized that the superior succubus was using charm on him, Sauron did not hesitate to pretend that he was charmed by the other party. Then, when the other party turned around and wanted to leave him to block the dragon to die, Sauron mercilessly stabbed the other party's heart. The nature of a demon was not much better than that of a devil. The moment the superior succubus used charm on him, Sauron had the idea of killing her. Without the slightest pause, Sauron quickly retreated to the other side. He had just killed a superior succubus, and it seemed to be an officer-level superior succubus. If he returned to the succubus army now, he might be in trouble. To the succubus army, Sauron's life was definitely not as valuable as the superior succubus. Originally, the succubus queen, Mechanut, was a very protective person. The officer-level succubus often sent other demons to their deaths. It was better for him to take advantage of the situation and become a wandering demon. Anyway, with his current strength, it was enough to explore the bottomless abyss. The blood war was too dangerous. This kind of quasi-legendary level succubus died just like that. It was better for him to avoid it for the time being, because the scale of the blood war might escalate. Chapter 541. Outer Islands, Mordor City. Soren slowly walked out of the study. He looked up at the color of the sky. A dark cloud was approaching in the distance, and thunder could be heard faintly in the distance. He could not help but murmur, "It seems that a storm is coming." It's not easy to multitask. I didn't expect it to be so difficult to maintain control of two bodies at the same time with a god-level mind. It seems that the limit of my control is two bodies. It's almost difficult for me to make other avatars while maintaining the demon avatar. The avatar of a god was not an independent consciousness. Instead, Soren's soul consciousness was divided into two parts and injected into the body. It felt like writing with two hands at the same time, one hand writing on the front and the other hand writing on the back. But in fact, it was much more difficult. It was estimated that only a god could do it. This was because other spellcasters, even if they were legendary wizards, could only control their thoughts after creating a projection clone. They would not be able to control their bodies at the same time. The simulacrum spell during the Arcane Empire could be used to multitask and control two bodies at the same time, one body and one avatar, but the duration was very short. Soren's current situation was that he was multitasking 24 hours a day. Only a god-level brain could do it. But this kind of calculation also had a flaw. That was, Soren could not leave Mordor City. If his body also ran out to fight, then the control ability of the demon avatar would be seriously affected. At present, his divinity could not achieve a perfect battle between two bodies. Therefore, when attacking the indigenous tribes, his demon avatar was resting in the steel fortress. When the demon avatar participated in the Abyss Blood War, his body had to do some simple things and then transfer his core energy to the demon avatar. This way was very taxing on the brain. Without the support of the divinity, he could not bear it at all. Where should I go? Soren rested for a while and returned to the study. Then he took out a thick black book and turned to the last page. Knowledge. Reading. Accumulation. During this rare and precious time, Soren had been crazily reading books. Gloria's collection of books, the Fallen Witches database, and some of the books that the Northern Witch Council had opened to him. Soren relied on his eidetic memory, talent and the powerful memory granted by the Godhead. During this period of time, he had read thousands of extremely complicated and obscure secret technique books. The first floor, Abyss Plane. Soren's slender fingers stopped moving. He shook his head and muttered to himself, no. It was too dangerous. The core of the Blood War is now the 10,000 Abyss Planes. It is not suitable for me to join the Blood War before I become a legendary flame fiend. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The pages of the book kept flipping, and Soren's fingers stopped moving again. He mumbled, the third floor, the Forgotten Land. It was not appropriate. The fourth layer, the Great Abyss, is not suitable either. The sixth level, Myriad Eye Abyss, is too dangerous. This is the territory of the great matriarch of the Eye Demons. There are Eye Demons everywhere. If you are not a legendary, you will die. The seventh level, Land of Mirage, seems to be the territory of the Lizard Man Lord. I can consider it. Soren picked up the quill and made a mark. He had always been a very rational and calm person. He would not act rashly if he was not sure. The demon incarnation was quite important. Once it died, all his efforts would be in vain. Now that he had set up a starting point, the most important thing now was to fight steadily and steadily, further strengthen this trump card buried in the abyss, and finally wait for the arrival of his real body. The eighth level, Skinning Abyss. It is a bit dangerous, but I can consider it. I seem to have seen the Lord here, the Skinning Abyss. The human skin magic armor seems to be the equipment that this guy likes to make. Record it. Soren picked up the quill and quickly recorded again. There were so many levels in the abyss, but there were not many that were suitable for him to go. Some places were too dangerous, and some places were too harsh. The places suitable for the demon incarnation must be carefully selected. The 9th level, Boiling Sea. No. The 10th level, Land of Corruption. Still no. The 13th level, Blood Sea. This is the territory of the Misfortune Goddess. Although she seems to be kind to me, it is better not to go to her territory. The Twin of Destiny was too dangerous. Even if the incarnation of the Misfortune Goddess appeared in Soren's apotheosis ceremony, he still did not dare to get too close to her. Being close to the Misfortune Goddess was equivalent to being far away from the Luck Goddess. These two twins of destiny had been fighting for thousands of years. Soren felt that it was better not to get involved. At least for now, he absolutely could not participate in the battle between the twins of destiny. Blood Sea, excluded. Neither demons nor devils dared to enter this territory easily. The demon lords fought fiercely, and they all knew to avoid the Blood Sea's domain. The 14th level, Steam Swamp. Excluded. The 17th level, Land of Death. Excluded. The 21st level, Cremation. The Lord is a Baylor. Soren stopped. He quickly took out another book and began to search for information about the Demon Lord and the geographical environment of this level of the abyss. Just by looking at the name, he knew that this place was more suitable for the demon incarnation. Baylor Demon Lord. Soren's fingers gently tapped on the table and murmured, the 21st level of the abyss is not too far and not too close. It seems that it is not difficult to go through the river Styx. I have listed it as one of the targets. The 23rd level, Steel Ice Field. Excluded. The 27th level. The 41st level. Soren flipped faster and faster, but in the end, he still returned to the 21st level of the abyss, cremation. This was the territory of the Baler. The demon lord was a powerful Baler. The environment was a volcanic terrain with a large number of fire demons, burning monsters, fire elementals, and Baler. There were also some other demons, but because of the characteristics of the plane, they were mainly creatures that were immune to fire. This is it. Soren frowned and closed the book. The operation of the abyss must be supported by the material plane. Otherwise, it would be too difficult to rely on a demon incarnation to rise. He looked up at the sky outside. It was completely dark at this time. A storm was coming. The weather changes in the outer islands were relatively large. If it were not for his divine realm, the climate would be a little worse. The storm would probably last for a few more days. Now that all the ships near the coast had docked, the military parade that had been prepared for a long time would begin once the storm was over. The Eye of the North was confirmed to be there. Although the Princess Royal of the Frost Kingdom would not come in person, her avatar would appear on that day. Since the mysterious disappearance and return, something seemed to have happened to the Princess Royal. Her strength had become more and more unfathomable. There are still 5.5 months. Soren tapped on the table gently, turned and left the study, and murmured, "Let's go to the half-plane again. I really can't break the war chess game. I'm afraid I can only challenge the demigod Thaling directly. If I can break the space barrier of the half-plane, the chance of winning should be about 60%. Soren's chances of winning were not very high. But it was imperative to take down the war chess half-plane. If there was really no way to break through, he could only challenge Thaling 13. Mordor City had now been perfected in all aspects, but it still lacked a strategic deterrent weapon. This weapon was a wizard tower. Soren could not stay in Mordor City all the time. There would always be a time when he would go out and walk around, and if he could build a wizard tower, then whether Soren was in Mordor or not, he could deter many enemies and make most people not dare to act rashly. The wizard tower in the Shadow Plane was the original form of the floating city. According to the research of Gloria and Fallen Witch, this wizard tower could be transferred to the material plane. In this way, everything in Mordor City would be perfect. Chapter 542. Shadow Plane, War Chess Half-Plane. When Soren returned here again, everything in front of him was still the same, but there was no trace of Thaling 13. When he was about to explore this half-plane, suddenly a magic light appeared in front of him, and then Thaling 13 appeared in the teleportation circle. As the manager of the half-plane, Thaling 13 could perceive all the changes in the half-plane. It still looked at Soren with a blank face and said with a metallic voice, "You're back. Do you want to continue the challenge? If you don't pass the challenge, you won't be able to get the permission to enter." Soren looked around. As the divine perception spread out, he found the traces of many alchemy creatures. A large number of golems were hidden nearby. During the Arcane Empire, they replaced most of the labor force and were also used as consumables on the battlefield. The number of golems arranged here would not be less than the number that appeared in the Battle of Golems. If he could take them all, Soren would not have to rely on the Witch Council everywhere. These golems could fully meet the needs of Mordor City. Rock golems, steel golems, and alchemy golems. There was alchemy technology here that was far beyond the material plane. Soren was more and more determined to get it. Challenge. Soren stood in front of Thaling 13 and said in a deep voice, "I'm ready." As alchemy creatures, Thaling creatures were more like superintelligent robots. They had their own souls, but they acted according to the soul imprint left by the Creator, just like the law of robots. Thaling 13 in front of him was the manager and guardian of this place. Obviously, its creator had left some orders, even if he might fall. After all, even if an arcanist was facing death, he would still want to keep some of his works. The half-plane was the best work. Wizards created a world from nothing. Maybe it was not a large space, but it definitely took a lot of effort. The challenge begins. Thaling 13's eyes lit up, and then the teleportation circle opened. Soren's figure disappeared. It was still the beginning. When Soren opened his eyes again, he was already standing at the entrance of the village. In the distance, the sky was filled with flames, and he could vaguely hear the roars of demons. He didn't stop at all. Soren instantly slipped into the darkness and carefully hid. A group of dretches appeared. They did not notice Soren and just destroyed everything in front of them excitedly. Very good. Soren took a deep breath and murmured, "The first step is a success. Now we need to find a suitable weapon and see if there are any other survivors in the village." Without power, one could only rely on wisdom. This was probably the original intention of the creator, because it seemed that no matter who appeared, they were just ordinary people at the beginning. Weapons. This was what Soren needed the most right now. This time, he didn't go to the blacksmith's shop. Instead, he carefully moved forward in the shadows, looking for a big house that was more eye-catching. There were usually militia guards in such a village. There were no weapons in the blacksmith's shop, but it was possible to find some with the militia. Many places nearby were already on fire, and there were sounds of fighting on the other side of the village. Soren quickly found a good house. Boom! The raging fire burned down a house, and the sound of it collapsing was heard. Soren also took this opportunity to quickly rush into the house. There were a few wandering dretches nearby. They noticed the noise here, but they didn't care. Because they only heard the sound of the house collapsing, and they were excited because of the destruction. There were no swords. Soren just glanced inside and found that there were no swords, but there were other weapons. A hunting bow that was in perfect condition. There were only 7 arrows. The number was not enough, but it should play a big role. The requirements for archery were quite high. A sharpened wooden shaft was not useful at all. A complete arrow should be composed of 3 parts, the arrowhead, the shaft, and the feather. If the quality of the arrows did not meet the requirements, the shooting accuracy would be reduced. The quality of the arrows in front of him was probably very difficult to recycle. 7 arrows. Soren took a deep breath, held the hunting bow in his hand, and equipped the quiver with arrows. Then, he carefully walked out of the cave. 3 dretches. One was lying on the ground gnawing on something, the other was jumping around in the fire, and the last one seemed to be looking for something. Through the light of the fire, they could see that it was holding a small silver-white object, which seemed to be silver jewelry. Demons also like to collect trophies. Soren held his breath and quietly approached. The lethality of the hunting bow was not enough, and it was difficult to cause fatal damage to the demons. It was not easy to penetrate the demon's skin. He needed to get closer and increase the penetration of the hunting bow. It was best to shoot directly in the head, so he could kill one of the demons first. Swoosh! An arrow flew out from the darkness. Soren still had his archery skills, and the dretch that was eating something was shot in the head. The arrow was directly nailed into the head, and it died on the spot. Success! After killing a Timurid demon first, Soren immediately aimed at the second one with an arrow on his bow. The death of their companion alerted the other dretches, and they all rushed toward the place where Soren was hiding. But at this time, the second arrow was shot and hit the chest of the dretch that rushed in front. Swoosh! Soren did not hesitate and shot 5 arrows in a row. 2 arrows hit the enemy's head, and 3 dretches were killed in one breath. Phew! At this time, Soren relaxed a little, and he actually felt a sense of exhaustion. He had overexerted himself. This ordinary person's physical fitness was really low, and his physical fitness was not up to his combat requirements at all. Kitchen knife. He needed a kitchen knife. Soren quickly glanced around, then took out the kitchen knife from the blacksmith shop and quickly came to the body of the dretch. Dang! He raised the kitchen knife and cut the dretch's fingers. The hard bones were difficult to cut, but he still cut off the longest finger. Next to it was the body of a woman. It seemed that the Dretch had just eaten her. The nature of demons was evil. Soren was not surprised by this, but he was a little shocked by everything here. He had a weapon. And it was an extraordinary weapon. As an ordinary person, Soren's brain was also working quickly. Tactics, skills, and command were all indispensable. It seemed that he had rarely encountered a battle that required such a comprehensive ability to test his own abilities. The claws of the Dretch. Because of its demon bloodline, its claws were regarded as a +1 natural magic weapon. This was an extraordinary weapon that was difficult to find in the entire village. A dagger. Soren spent 5 minutes crafting the dagger into a simple dagger. This poor +1 dagger was enough for him to break through the defense of any demon nearby. As long as he could break through the defense, there was a possibility of success for him. After all, his experience and skills accumulated through countless battles were not just for show. No injuries, no hunger, and my stamina is enough. Soren took a little rest and then began to move forward. He thought to himself, I have a weapon now, and I can fight against a small group of demons. Now I have to explore the surroundings and find the key to break through the situation. This challenge seems to be a test of my comprehensive ability without strength. There should be a way to defeat the demons. Everything here is so real. I don't know if I can use it to train my subordinates in the future. Such a real battle may be able to train some elites. Flames jumped. Soren moved forward along the dark corners. Many corpses began to appear nearby. There were old people, women, and children. Adult men seemed to be rare. It could be judged that they were summoned in advance to defend, and the demons broke in from other places and slaughtered the old, weak, women, and children. If this was the case, then there should be militia fighting against the demons. 2 more Dretches appeared. This time, Soren went up to the Dretch directly. Facing the aggressive Dretch, he rolled to the side and swung his dagger. Plop. The demon's claws cut open the enemy's throat, and the +1 rare weapon easily killed one. You want to run? Facing the Dretch that was frightened by the sudden death of its companion, Soren quickly rushed up and killed it. Very good start. Except for not being able to level up in this challenge, Soren had gradually adapted to this kind of battle. Defeating the strong with the weak. It was a battle of momentum and explosive skills in a life and death battle. There were more and more corpses on the ground. Most of them were human, but there were also demons. Soren found a different corpse. His ears were a bit pointy, and he looked like a half-elf. Next to the corpse, there was a damaged hunting bow and an ordinary dagger. Soren put away the dagger and looked at the corpse. He found a quiver with 8 wolf fang arrows in it. This half-elf should be a hunter in the village because he was wearing animal skin. A +1 rare dagger, an ordinary dagger, a hunting bow, and 10 arrows. These were all Soren's equipment. In front of him, there were other demons. This time, there were not only Dretches, but there were also middle-grade demons. He was challenging middle-grade demons above level 5. It was almost impossible for him to win with his current ability. There were more and more sounds of resistance in the distance. It seemed that the casualties of the villagers were very serious. How do I break out of this? Soren frowned. He glanced around, and suddenly there was a glimmer of light in his eyes. He quickly sneaked to the side. He found a military crossbow. The corpse next to it seemed to be a guard. It seemed to be a member of the village guard. In this case, if there was a military crossbow, then it would be very useful. Chapter 543. Military crossbow. It was the best equipment for novice adventurers. It could penetrate plate armor at close range, and it was also the first core equipment that Soren obtained in Amber City. Crossbows were an important weapon for challenging opponents of a higher level, because they could only rely on these weapons to kill the enemy when their strength was not enough. The military crossbow in front of him was made of steel. If it hit the demon's body, it might not cause too much damage. But if it hit the brain directly, Soren was confident that he could kill the berserk demon in one shot. As long as he shot through the skull, he could kill all the enemies except for a few. This military crossbow was the key to breaking the deadlock. There was no way to advance into a profession, and he could only fight with the physical fitness of an ordinary person. Therefore, he must seize all the opportunities available to him. This war game was simply a challenge to the limit. Now Soren only hoped that after he completed the challenge, he would be able to get the loot that was worth his effort. Stealth. In order to cover the sound of his footsteps, and because he did not have the ability to hide in the shadows, Soren simply took off his shoes. The halfling stealth was enhanced because many of them did not wear shoes. Their soles were very thick, and there was almost no sound when they walked. Now Soren took off his shoes and went into stealth to reduce the chances of being discovered by the enemy as much as possible. In the current situation, even if there was only a 1% chance, it could affect the final outcome. Night was the best cover to avoid the fire. Soren quietly approached the battlefield. In front of him was a group of low-level demons, led by a burly berserk demon. This kind of demon that he could easily kill was now the most terrifying creature in the whole village. Many human militiamen had fallen around its body. As a middle-level demon with a challenge rating of more than 5, it had the power to easily destroy a village in the material plane. There were few survivors. Soren saw that there were less than 10 people who could fight. Among them, a middle-aged man looked like the captain of the militia. When he fought, there were traces of military swordsmanship. He should be a retired soldier. In the crowd, there was a priest in a white robe. Soren was not sure which god he believed in, but looking at his casting movements, he was only a low-level priest. His divine spell slots were quite limited, and his innate perception was probably not high. The number of divine spells that a priest could cast still depended on their own perception. If their basic talent was too poor, it would be difficult for them to advance to a higher realm. The only thing that surprised Soren was, he even saw a wizard who could use level 3 spells. He should be the most powerful human at the moment. Unfortunately, he was facing a demon. Judging from the nearby demon corpses, this wizard did not have many spell slots left. There were priests, warriors, and wizards. Soren seemed to have thought of something, but there was no time to search for it. There were still houses in the village that had not collapsed. Judging from the attire of these people, they should have settled down here. Therefore, there was not only one way to break out of this situation. There might be useful items in other parts of the village. However, the battle was nearing its end. If Soren were to leave now, they would be done for. He could only grit his teeth and fight. If the demon killed all these people and freed up his hands, it was almost impossible for an ordinary person like him to survive. Soren lurked in the darkness and approached from the side barefoot. There was another corpse of a berserk demon on the ground. There were very obvious traces of corrosion on the corpse. There was an obvious arrow wound in the chest, as if it was first penetrated by an arrow-like attack, and then the wound was corroded. Melf's acid arrow? Soren's pupils shrank slightly, and he thought to himself, it's a popular spell during the Arcane Empire. It's a very powerful level 2 spell. It's the same creator as Melf's Minute Meteor. A level 2 penetrative spell was sometimes more powerful than a level 3 or 4 spell. Sure enough. Facing the intermediate demon in front of him, the wizard who did not have many spell slots quickly retreated. After pulling away, he cast another spell. Soon, a strong acid arrow was condensed in his palm. Puff. The berserk demon's chest was penetrated by the spell. The acid spread all over its body and corroded its body, making it let out a terrible scream. Boom! A huge wooden beam was thrown out, and the white-robed priest next to it could not dodge in time. He was smashed out, and there was a crisp sound of bones breaking. The dretches seized the opportunity and swarmed forward. In the blink of an eye, the white-robed priest was already badly mutilated. They can't hold on any longer. Soren seemed to want to rush out of the darkness, but suddenly he seemed to feel something and hid back in the shadows again. Hee hee. A strange laughter sounded, and a wizard in a black robe appeared in the night. He slowly walked out of the village. It seemed that his body was blessed with a protection spell. The nearby demons did not take the initiative to attack him. He came in front of the survivors and said in a deep voice, "Karnath, hand over the arcane card. Maybe I can also spare your life." The middle-aged wizard looked at the dead priest next to him, and a trace of sadness appeared on his face. He slowly said, "Don't even think about it. The arcane card will never be given to a guy like you." The black-robed wizard looked at them with a strange smile and slowly said, "Okay then. When you all die, I'll find it myself." His figure disappeared on the spot. It seemed that he was blessed with an invisibility spell. This was an intermediate wizard with a high casting level. Arcane card? Soren's figure was crawling on the ground, but his ears were pricked up to listen carefully. The appearance of the black-robed wizard had once again increased the difficulty of his plan because he, as an ordinary person, might not even be able to block an arcane missile. Where was the card? If he could get the arcane card and use it, he might be able to turn the situation around. But where would the arcane card be placed? The demons launched another attack. Although the figure of the black-robed wizard had disappeared, Soren could still judge from the water on the ground that he was moving. He was moving around the side, and his target was another wizard. A mid-grade magus. A bold idea popped up in Soren's mind, and he said to himself, his melee ability is not much stronger than an ordinary person's. If his defensive magic field is broken, a single bolt may kill him. After killing the wizard and relying on the survivors, the probability of defeating the demons was more than 50%. It was worth a try. Soren quickly made a decision in his mind, but he needed to wait for a better opportunity. As long as someone could break the black-robed wizard's energy shield, then his opportunity would come. After all, wizards were more powerful in the later stages. Aganya fire breath. A pillar of fire suddenly appeared and directly ignited the middle-aged wizard. The black-robed wizard's figure appeared, and he laughed excitedly. It was another improved spell from the Arcane Empire. The black-robed wizard who found the opportunity to launch a sneak attack hit his opponent and directly burned the enemy beyond recognition. Although the enemy did not die on the spot, he was almost half dead. It was not the time yet. Although the survivor's situation was critical, Soren still calmed down and waited for the right opportunity to make a move. At this moment, he was an assassin. There was only one chance to make a move. If he failed, he was doomed to die. Flame arrow. In the face of the black-robed wizard's sneak attack, the middle-aged wizard's counterattack finally broke out. A three-circle flame arrow flew out. The militia captain dodged the demon in front of him and rushed directly toward the black-robed wizard. As a retired veteran, he knew very well that spellcasters were the biggest threat. If the black-robed wizard made a move, everyone would die here. Now's the time. The opportunity that Soren had been waiting for finally appeared. He rushed out of the darkness in an instant, and no one noticed that there was another person nearby. Even if they inadvertently noticed it, an ordinary demon might not care. 150 meters. 120 meters. 80 meters. When the militia captain rushed toward the black-robed wizard, Soren also quickly raised the military crossbow. It was about 80 meters away. It was not difficult to hit the target at this distance, but it required a lot of skill and a certain amount of luck. The head. It must directly hit the enemy's head. Soren took a deep breath, raised the military crossbow, and quickly pulled the trigger. Accompanied by a cold light, just as the militia captain swung his sword and broke the black-robed wizard's energy shield, the black-robed wizard retreated and wanted to dodge, but the crossbow arrow penetrated the wizard's temple. Astonishment. The entire battlefield was filled with astonishment and disbelief. Everyone's eyes turned to Soren, who suddenly appeared. Even the chaotic demons never thought that the black-robed wizard who summoned them would die in the hands of a civilian. Even if he relied on the military crossbow in his hand to kill the black-robed wizard. I've finally killed it. At this moment, Soren was very excited. As a civilian, he killed a wizard. This was something that he would never dare to think about in the past. But here, he managed to do it. Everything was done at the peak, and the timing was almost accurate to the millisecond. If there was a slight mistake, he would definitely die. But in the end, he succeeded. There was no time to think too much. Soren quickly reloaded the military crossbow, and then aimed at the berserk demon not far away. As long as he killed this enemy, the crisis would be over. This kind of result would be difficult to replicate, so he had to pass the war chest challenge in one go. Destroy them. The militia captain obviously realized this opportunity. As a veteran, he quickly rushed toward the enemy, preparing to attract some of their attention and buy time for Soren to shoot. A top-notch crossbowman. Although he looked like a commoner, his skills were either gifted or heaven-defying luck. He hoped that it was the latter. Because only those favored by the goddess of luck could help them survive this crisis. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.